Chapter 99. Great Elder Princess didn't care about what other people did at the banquet, but only those who had nothing to do with her. Now, she had regarded Jingwan as a real guest, her guest. It didn't matter if it was someone from her own residence or someone from outside. If they dared to cause trouble under her nose, she would skin them alive once she found out. Therefore, even if Great Elder Princess had a good temperament, how could a person who grew up in the ruthless imperial palace be really simple? Speaking of this zither, Jingwan had to admit that it was a good zither. Whether it was the materials used or the workmanship, they were all first class. The only problem was probably that the strings were too tight. People who didn't have a little finger strength couldn't even pluck the strings at all. Even if they could, it would be quite laborious and it would be difficult for them to finish the whole piece. However, the biggest advantage of this kind of zither was that the effect of playing those majestic songs would be greatly enhanced. Jingwan looked up at Luo Jingying calmly. She was smiling proudly and provocatively, and she was waiting to see Jingwan make a fool of herself. She had made a name for herself as a good sister. She didn't want to let her down. Jingwan suddenly smiled. Yes, her good sister had created a good opportunity for her. Of course, she couldn't let her down. Seeing Jingwan's smile, Luo Jingying's heart skipped a beat and suddenly had a bad premonition. Others saw that the woman on the parterre didn't move for a long time, and some of the male guests even began to kick up a fuss, asking her to play quickly or come down to accept the punishment. However, because there was a distance between the male guest seats and those who were closer to the female guest seats were more noble, they naturally wouldn't do anything inappropriate. And those young people who dared to make a fuss didn't dare to be too close to those nobles, nor did they dare to kick up a fuss too loudly. Therefore, Jingwan could only hear their voices, but she didn't know what they were talking about. Shut up. Li Hongyuan held the wine glass with a malicious look in his eyes. The two words weren't heavy, but the effect was quite amazing. Almost in an instant, the male guests' seats fell silent. Therefore, using the King of Hell as a silencer was not a good idea. Li Hongyuan moved his body, as if trying to make himself more comfortable, and closed his eyes. The people who were causing a ruckus earlier patted their chests. It seemed that they had disturbed the rest of the King of Hell. They couldn't help but curse in their hearts. If he wanted to sleep, why didn't he scram back to sleep? However, he could only curse in his heart. It wasn't as if there weren't people who had peed their pants after being scared by the King of Hell. Was Li Hongyuan really resting? Of course not. He was just using this method to hide his anger. His anger could no longer be hidden when he opened his eyes. It was clear to see how much anger he had. Wan wasn't a high-profile person, but she wasn't someone who didn't know how to pretend to know when she didn't know. But at the same time, she also showed that since she had gone up, she could do it. According to what he knew, Wan had indeed learned the zither 3 years ago. However, it wasn't for a long time, and it was intermittent. The people he sent to Qian Manor also didn't know what level she had reached. Even in his previous life, he hadn't heard of her being famous in this area. However, with his previous guesses as a foundation, Li Hongyuan wouldn't find it strange no matter what kind of shocking things she did. It was just that today in his previous life, there wasn't such a thing. Although there was Yu Yaro's game, it didn't fall on Wan's head. Perhaps there was a small unforeseen event somewhere. This unforeseen event might cause other unforeseen events. However, he was using this banquet as an excuse to arrange some things. It wouldn't be strange if other things happened. What made him angry was that Wan had been tricked. What made him even angrier was that with her slender fingers, who knew how much suffering she would have to endure after playing a song? However, under everyone's watchful eyes, he couldn't directly go up and pull her down. Both of them were good. If he didn't repay them well, they would really think that Wan was easy to bully. Clang! With a sound, Jingwan's hands finally began to move. Perhaps it was because she hadn't played the zither for a long time. The first few notes were not very coherent, intermittent, and out of tune. Luo Jingying showed a contemptuous smile. She thought that she was very capable. It was fine that she hadn't learned the zither before. She didn't need to pretend to be so good at it. However, this was also good. It was more disgusting to pretend to know something when you didn't know it, than to directly confess that you didn't know it. Great Elder Princess also sighed softly. Sure enough, it was too forced. This zither was not suitable for a girl to play. However, it didn't take long for a change to happen. Gradually, it became smooth and coherent. Jingwan's fingers slid quickly on the strings, and she was particularly attentive and serious. Many people made similar sounds. The crowd, who originally didn't take this child's game seriously, gradually focused and listened attentively. It was a song that they had never heard before. It was sonorous, powerful, magnificent, and full of the solemn sound of fighting. It made people's scalps tingle and their blood boil. Even those calm and self-restrained elders couldn't help blushing. What's more, a certain elder of the inner pavilion, who was usually cold and reserved, always did things neatly and concisely, was so excited that he knocked over his chair and stared at Jingwan, who was playing the zither. His expression was just like a young boy who had fallen in love for the first time. When it came to the most intense part, Jingwan's hands were so fast that they appeared to be phantoms. As she devoted herself to the music, her body moved with her hands. Naturally, her movements were a little big, but it didn't make people feel that she was improper. Instead, with her movements, they seemed to be able to feel the artistic conception. Only a few people were not attracted by the sound of the zither. Instead, they noticed that Jingwan's face was flushed and there were fine beads of sweat on her forehead. Although they couldn't hear it, they knew how fast she was breathing from her slightly swollen red lips and rapidly closing nostrils. The most important thing was that her fingers were bleeding. However, because the color of the cloth was relatively dark, it couldn't be seen. What could be seen were the zither strings, and it could only be seen through the reflection of light. Li Hongyuan resisted the impulse to forcibly interrupt her several times. He wanted to hide such a dazzling WNWN, but he also wanted the world to be convinced by her. It was such a good opportunity to become famous, although she didn't want this. She had persevered until now. If her efforts were to go down the drain because of him, even if she didn't complain, she would still feel some regret in her heart. It wasn't that Jingwan didn't know her current state, but what she felt was not the pain in her fingers, but the state of being immersed. To put it in a more profound way, she had entered the state. Her body might be in the worst state, but her mind was in the best state. If there was a next time, Jingwan might not be able to reach this state. This state was too rare. She didn't want to stop, and she couldn't stop. The surging music came to an end. Jingwan's fingers slid one last time, and it was with this last stroke that one of the strings couldn't bear the weight and broke. However, since it was broken at the end, it naturally didn't have much of an impact. A certain cabinet elder even clapped his hands and cheered in a somewhat crazy manner, attracting many sidelong glances. However, those who knew his nature shook their heads and laughed. He couldn't be blamed. This song was indeed good. Even those who didn't know how to play the zither felt that it was good, including those uncouth generals. It was really too exciting. Most of them felt that it was good. There were also those who were jealous. There were also some princesses and princesses who didn't take her seriously at all. If one looked carefully, one would find that Ruan Fengfei had a strange expression. She was carelessly pulling at her brocade handkerchief, and the depths of her eyes were filled with a desire called destruction. Naturally, there were also people like Luo Jingying and Li Ruyu whose faces were ashen. Luo Jingying subconsciously looked at Li Ruyu. Her gaze was as if she wanted to eat her alive, and it made her tremble fiercely. She was extremely scared. She had vowed that Luo Jingwan absolutely knew nothing about zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, and so on. Moreover, her hands didn't look like they had touched the zither before. Not to mention that she often played the zither. As long as her zither skills were not bad, her fingers would inevitably have calluses. Sun Yijia and Ruan Fengfei were no exception. Who knew? While Luo Jingying was scared, her hatred for Jingwan deepened. She must have done it on purpose. She deliberately hid her skills so that when the time was right, she could amaze the world with a brilliant feat. She wanted to use this opportunity to harm her. Luo Jingying had never reflected. If it weren't for her scheme, Jingwan wouldn't have gone on stage at all. Perhaps, people would never know that she could play the zither. Li Ruyu took a few steps forward and grabbed Luo Jingying's arm. She used a lot of strength and said, "Come with me." Luo Jingying knew that if she left, she would suffer a lot. She wanted to ask for help, but no one noticed her. "How dare you not listen to me? Do you believe that I won't disfigure your face?" Li Ruyu threatened viciously. Luo Jingying had to compromise. As long as she could save her face, it didn't matter if she suffered a little. She swore that she would get it back from that bitch Luo Jingwan. After playing the zither, Jingwan felt tired. There was also a piercing pain in her fingers. She could only dig her fingers into her palms to slightly relieve the pain. Jingwan calmed her breathing and calmed her rapid heartbeat. She glanced down and found that the two disgusting people were gone. Thinking of Li Ruyu's character, Luo Jingying really reaped what she had sown. Jingwan stayed on the stage for a long time, but no one objected. Those who didn't know the truth didn't dare to speak rashly. However, those who knew the truth knew that this piece of music had probably exhausted the little girl's mind. Even the elder of Zither Addict's pavilion didn't think that he could achieve such an effect. That kind of state had little to do with the skill. It was the result of many factors. "Nanny Shu, help Miss Luo down." Great Elder Princess ordered another nanny. It was definitely a great honor to let the most capable nanny of Great Elder Princess do it in person. Jingwan did feel exhausted. Since someone helped her, she didn't refuse. She smiled and said, "Thank you, nanny." "You're welcome, miss. It's my honor." It was a great honor for Jingwan, but it was also a great honor for Nanny Shu. Now Miss Luo was the center of attention and favored by her master, while Nanny Shu, in the end, was just a servant. Jingwan stood up with the help of Nanny Shu. Her legs were a little weak. It was more tiring than exercising for 2 hours. It was not scientific. Jingwan staggered a little and steadied herself. When she went down, she naturally did not use all her strength on Nanny Shu's hands. She usually did not need anyone to support her, and Nanny Shu felt that she only used a little more strength than usual to support her master. Only when she was really close to Jingwan did she know how bad her condition was. She could not help but sigh. This young lady really had amazing perseverance. Jingwan let go of Nanny Shu, shook her head slightly to her family and friends who looked concerned about her. She naturally put her hands in her sleeves and bowed to the nobles. "Great Elder Princess, I'm a little impolite. Please allow me to clean up." "Okay, you little girl. Don't be so polite at this time. Go ahead. Nanny Shu also go and serve Miss Luo well." After Jingwan left, Great Elder Princess noticed Madame Luo. She invited her to the front and specially added a chair. Another maid of Great Elder Princess went to take the zither back and naturally found the blood on the strings. She handed the zither to Great Elder Princess and said, "Master, have a look." Great Elder Princess said with a cold face, "Ask someone to send the best medicine for wounds." "Thank you, Great Elder Princess." Madame Luo thanked her. No one saw her clenched hands. How can I accept old Madame's thanks? In the end, this matter has something to do with this princess. Great Elder Princess, don't say so. There are so many people in such a big mansion today. How can everything be done well? Great Elder Princess sighed and said, "Only someone like Madame Dowager can raise such an excellent girl like Miss Luo." Great Elder Princess, you flatter me. Apart from this small interlude, many people were still immersed in this song, especially the elder of the Zither Addict Pavilion. If someone hadn't pulled him back just now, he would have rushed to the female guest area. That would really be a joke. The excited elder of Zither Addict Pavilion seemed to think of a question: whose girl is this? She plays the zither so well, but I haven't heard any news about her. Why does she hide so well? Luo Peishan was also very surprised. He didn't expect his dear granddaughter to be so capable. After being surprised, he became excited. Now, he was still in a state of excitement. He stroked his beard and the corners of his mouth almost reached his ears. He didn't hear what the elder of Zither Addict Pavilion said at all. It must be said that he was old and his eyesight was not as good. He was also relatively far away and did not understand things like the Zither realm, so he did not know about Jingwan's situation. Otherwise, he would be worried. Among these adults, Probably only the 5th Grand Minister was familiar with Jingwan. Looking at Luo Peishan's complacent look, he really wanted to beat him up. What was so great about having a granddaughter who was good at raising flowers and playing the zither? Even if he didn't have such a granddaughter in his family. Damn it, he wanted to snatch her away. Elder Jiang, that is Lord Luo's granddaughter. Therefore, everyone's attention was focused on Luo Peishan. Everyone saw his silly look, but they all felt that it was reasonable. If they had such an excellent child, they would also be happy. Everyone praised and flattered him. Luo Peishan smiled reservedly and humbly agreed. Elder Jiang calmed down a lot and regained his cold and reserved demeanor. However, when he saw Luo Peishan, this old fox who was still pretending to be obedient after getting a bargain, he still snorted. Lord Luo, this old man wants to exchange for that zither score. What do you want? This, Elder Jiang, you know. Luo Peishan stroked his beard hesitantly and looked like he was in a difficult position. He was indeed in a difficult position. He didn't know anything about the zither score. Even if it was in the Luo family, it was still his granddaughter's. If it was any other descendant, he would naturally make the decision without hesitation. However, he couldn't do that for his third daughter. That girl was obedient, but her temper was quite bad. Once she was unhappy, what if she didn't allow him to get close to those treasures? He also couldn't do something like snatching his granddaughter's things. Not to mention other things, just his old wife was enough to make him suffer. In everyone's eyes, Lord Luo was clearly raising the price. However, Elder Jiang was the one who sent himself to be slaughtered. If it were them, they would also ruthlessly cut him down. This old man heard that Lord Luo loves flowers. I wonder if this is true. Elder Jiang, Lord Luo's family has a lot of treasures. It won't do if the flowers and trees you take out are too ordinary. Diwu Taiching spoke up. He also had his own plans. If the good flowers and trees were in the Luo family, he could justifiably visit them. If it was other families, it wouldn't be so convenient. Elder Jiang thought for a moment. There is a white peony in the Jiang family's old residence. Although it's not one of the 4 great treasures, Uncle, you mustn't. Prince Consort Jiang interrupted Elder Jiang's words. That's right, this Elder Jiang was Prince Consort Jiang's uncle. That white peony was his treasure. Now, his uncle actually wanted to exchange it for the zither score. Elder Jiang looked at him coldly, but Prince Consort Jiang didn't give in. In the heart of the zither fanatic, the zither and the zither score were naturally the most important, while in the heart of the flower fanatic, flowers were naturally the most important. Except for the ones she loved the most, other things had to be put aside even if they were priceless. As a result, the uncle and nephew even became a little competitive. No one had expected that things would develop like this. Prince Consort Jiang's servant hurriedly went to find Great Elder Princess. If this matter really became serious, it would be really shameful. After Great Elder Princess left the banquet for a while, she learned the whole story. She couldn't help laughing. She even had something to do with that girl again. However, even if she got the 18 scholar for free, she could give the white peony of the Jiang family to her. White peonies were common. The Jiang family's white peony had a lifespan of hundreds of years. Great Elder Princess directly called Yu Yarrow over. Without saying anything else, she only asked her to tell her father that she had got the 18 scholar. Although Wangzhou Yu Yarrow had reached the age where men and women were not allowed to sit together, she was still a little girl after all. It didn't matter if she went to the male guest banquet. It was better for her to tell her father than to let the maid pass on the message. After all, some words were just naive when spoken by Yu Yarrow. Yu Yarrow went to the male guest banquet, pounced on Prince Consort Jiang, and hugged his waist. Father, Prince Consort Jiang's momentum weakened. He also doted on Yu Yarrow very much. It was okay for her to be unruly in private, but now there were so many people. He helped Yu Yarrow stand up seriously, but he still subconsciously loosened the strength of his hands. Stand properly. You are such a big girl. Yu Yarrow pursed her lips unhappily. I originally wanted to wait until I got the 18 scholar and show it to you, but now I won't show it to you. They didn't hear anything else but 4 words, the 18 scholar. Prince Consort Jiang hurriedly squatted down. Yu Yao, tell me, what is the 18 scholar? Is it camellia? Where did it come from? The others were also curious, but Luo Peishan's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling, and Diwu Taiching also looked at him with a similar expression. It seemed that they had the same idea. Wangzhu Yu Yaro expressed that she was unhappy and didn't want to talk about it. Thus, Prince Consort Jiang coaxed her for a while. He didn't look like a strict father at all. All right, seeing that her father was so sincere, Wangzhu Yu Yaro magnanimously forgave him. Thus, she told her father how she got the 18 scholar. Father, Sister Luo is very good. She plays the zither very well, right? Yes, yes, yes. Prince Consort Jiang hurriedly nodded his head, but he looked at Luo Peishan with an awkward expression. Then, everyone looked at Luo Shangshu, Lord Luo. Luo Peishan's face was green, and his heart ached. Diwu Taiching went to the Luo family to see the 18 scholar. Seeing its appearance, he almost wanted to snatch it. Lord Luo, your family's girl is really generous. She gave away such a treasure just like that. If I knew it would be like this, I would have shamelessly asked her for it. Luo Peishan said with a straight face, if you damage other people's things, you should compensate them. My granddaughter didn't do anything wrong. You're already so old, yet you still want to ask a little girl for something. Do you really dare to ask for it? His words were righteous, but his heart was bleeding. Diwu Taiching snorted. Uncle, I'll immediately send a letter back and get someone to send that white peony to the capital. Prince Consort Jiang, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Just use the 18 scholar to exchange for the white peony. The 2 flowers will stay in their original places. It'll save you a lot of trouble. Diwu Taiching sincerely suggested. No, no, no. That's one thing. How can you mix it up just because you're afraid of trouble? The white peony had a long lifespan, but in his eyes, it wasn't as rare as the 18 scholar. That was the 18 scholar. He had coveted it for a long time. Lord Luo, don't worry. That white peony. Prince Consort Jiang praised his white peony as if it was rare in the heavens and unparalleled on earth. If it's really that good, keep it for yourself. Don't touch my good grandson's 18 scholar. Luo Shangshu was angry. Prince Consort Jiang immediately shut his mouth. Usually, because of the major disputes in the imperial court, he was refined and polite. Now, he didn't even care about his face, causing the corners of everyone's mouths to twitch. If you dared to ask, these people would tell you that for the sake of the treasure in their hearts, rules, propriety, and face, what were those things? They had long been thrown away. When the matter was over, they could just pick them up again. Father, I heard from Sister Luo that her family still has a lot of treasures and famous items. Wangzhu Yu Yaro added. Really? Prince Consort Jiang's eyes lit up. Then does Yu Yaro know what they have? Yu Yaro's memory was not bad. After hearing Jingwan say it once, she remembered everything, so she started counting with her fingers. Luo Peishan felt like a pack of wolves were looking at him. He wished he could cover Wangzhu Yu Yaro's mouth, but unfortunately, he could only listen to her count. He sighed in his heart. Why was his granddaughter so straightforward? She didn't reveal her wealth. Sure enough, when she finished counting, Luo Peishan only felt that he had become a big piece of delicious fat meat. The Grand Secretary, Lord Ruan, shifted his body and stroked his beard. Lord Luo is not honest. He hid so many treasures and did not take them out for everyone to see. If one were to say that he liked chrysanthemums the most, then Yaotai's jade phoenix. Of course, he also liked the other treasures. If he could get the 18 scholar, he would be very happy. But after all, it was a matter between the Luo family and Great Elder Princess's mansion. No matter how shameless they were, they couldn't snatch it. Even if they wanted to snatch it, they couldn't. None of these people were to be trifled with. Naturally, Ruan Ruiz Hong was not the only one who was ready to make a move. The youngest Minister of Works among the first-grade officials also had a garden full of plum blossoms. In fact, his love for orchids was no less than plum blossoms. Lord Luo, how about I exchange a green sepal plum for your mutated clivia lily? He said generously. Luo Peishan's face darkened. Lord Zhong, you are too unkind. Since it is a mutated clivia lily, perhaps it is the only one in the world. Its preciousness can be imagined. Lord Zhong, you want to exchange it with a green sepal plum? Those who were not particularly fond of flowers couldn't stand it anymore. Lord Luo was too thick-skinned and black-hearted. Those are my granddaughters. My granddaughters. You are a group of old men who can be her father and grandfather. Since Lord Luo had said this, they all shut up embarrassedly. They all stopped, at least on the surface, but a certain prince began to make trouble. I'm most interested in the tricolored peony. Didn't it say that third brother also had one a few days ago? Good things don't appear often, but once they appear, they gather together. Li Hongyuan said slowly. Oh, it turned out that this prince had woken up. Luo Peishan's heart tightened. His Majesty could snatch things and still reason with him. This king of hell was absolutely unreasonable. Li Hongming was somewhat uncomfortable. Of course, others couldn't see it. His tricolored peony was fake. He originally planned to bait Luo Peishan, but the Grand Secretary came looking for him several times. However, Ruan Rui's Hong was so difficult to deal with. If he found out, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. But was the Grand Secretary so easy to deal with? Those days, he was badly battered. And the person he wanted to bait turned out to have such a treasure in his family. No wonder he was indifferent. Sixth brother, you don't know. That kind of rare thing is not easy to raise. A few days ago, it was all ready. Sigh. Li Hongming shook his head regretfully. Many people also felt sorry. Only Luo Peishan and fifth Tai Ching looked at each other. It was just a dyed fake. This Prince Rui was really good at pretending, and Ruan Rui's Hong, Ruan Daren, also didn't show the slightest bit of regret. It seemed that he knew something. Don't look at how fiercely these people snatched the treasures they admired. It seemed that they were shameless and unprincipled. But the premise was that it didn't involve a conflict of interest. Once it was involved, their minds couldn't be clearer. After Ruan Rui's Hong looked for Li Hongming a few times, he more or less understood his intentions. Moreover, he didn't even see that peony. It would be strange if there was no problem. Li Hongyuan smiled sarcastically. That's why, if you don't have the ability, don't touch it. You're wasting a good thing. Wasn't it wasting a good-looking white peony? This was what Wan said. When these words came out, who knew how many people secretly scolded in their hearts, you're the least qualified to say these words. Wasting a good thing. You, Prince Jin, are number 2, no one in the world dares to be number 1. Therefore, he was a typical example of only the magistrate is allowed to set a fire, but the common people are not allowed to light a lamp. However, even if it was the emperor, these people dared to say what they should say. Only in front of Li Hongyuan, they couldn't. Even Ruan Rui's Hong, who was about to become his father-in-law, didn't dare to lightly open his mouth to lecture him. They weren't afraid of him like the young people, but they knew that he was a gangster and could do anything. Naturally, they had scruples. Li Hongyuan lazily swept a glance at the crowd and clicked his tongue. The third Biaoge that Yu Yaro mentioned just now, was it you, third imperial older brother? It must be said that third imperial older brother is indeed someone who has tender feelings for the fairer sex. Li Hongming's heart was full of resentment. Something that others ignored, you just had to bring it up. But Yu Yaro was right in front of him, so he couldn't deny it. He didn't show it on his face. Sixth younger brother is joking. It was just a coincidence. It's on the main street, blocking the road isn't good. He could only vaguely explain and couldn't say anything more. If he did, he might end up implicating Yu Yaro's unreasonable behavior. If that happened, he would offend Prince Consort Jiang. Li Hongyuan looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. This prince thought that third imperial older brother had taken a fancy to the Luo family. Yu Yaro, which young lady of the Luo family was it that broke your colored glass lamp? It seems to be the fourth young lady. Older sister Luo is the Luo family's third young lady. Li Hongyuan nodded. Third Imperial older brother wants to bring that fourth young lady back to the residence. Sixth younger brother, be careful with your words. This matter concerns the reputation of the Luo family. Li Hongming's face was solemn. Old third, this prince sees that you're a hypocrite. You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it. Could it be that the fourth young lady is even more outstanding than the third young lady? You must know that the third young lady is really Prince Kang. Luo Peishan coldly interrupted Li Hongyi's words. Li Hongyi also knew that he had a slip of the tongue and almost said something that he shouldn't have said, so he hurriedly apologized. It must be known that when Li Hongyi mentioned Jingwan, Li Hongyuan's eyes instantly condensed into ice. Luo Peishan looked at Li Hongyuan again. Prince Jin, please be lenient with your words. This couldn't be compared to other things. Most of the time, Li Hongyuan still gave face to the courtiers and was absolutely more polite than his brothers. Ben Wang only wants to raise the most beautiful flower in the world. Therefore, Luo Daren can put your heart back into your stomach. Other than that one flower, the others, whether it's the tricolor peony, 18 scholars, Yaotai Jade Phoenix, Ben Wang probably doesn't have the ability to raise them, so Ben Wang won't spoil them. Li Hongyuan was really giving face. Luo Peishan saluted. It must be said that Li Hongyuan's words seemed to be incoherent and didn't focus on the main point. It was as if he would say whatever he thought of. But the speaker had no intention, but the listener had the heart. Did Prince Rui, Li Hongming, really intend to rope in the Luo family? There were also those who were actually Li Hongyuan's subordinates, as well as Sun Yilin, who felt that there was a deeper meaning in his words. However, Sun Yilin actually breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, this living hell didn't have any interest in the brilliant Miss Luo just now. Otherwise, other people might have scruples about her engagement, but this person might not have scruples about it. Thinking that this person was really unpredictable, Sun Yilin felt a little uneasy and felt that something was wrong. After completing the task given by her mother, Yu Yarrow felt that it was boring here, so she simply went back to play games. After Yu Yarrow went back, she didn't see Jingwan. Mother, hasn't Sister Luo come back yet? How long has it been? It shouldn't be so fast. Although Great Elder Princess said so, she inadvertently glanced around and found that some people were also missing. Some things could be roughly figured out as long as one connected the dots. In order to prevent any more accidents, she still sent someone to check it out. In fact, Jingwan did encounter a little trouble. It didn't take much time for her to simply dress up and treat the wound on her hand. On the way back, she might have missed the people sent by Great Elder Princess at a fork in the road. Then, Nanny Shu was also called away, so Li Ruyu led some people to gamble. After all, this was Great Elder Princess's mansion, so Li Ruyu was not so arrogant as to directly whip people. Jingwan wouldn't be rude just because of the other party's aggressive attitude. Greetings, Your Highness. Li Ruyu's eyes fell straight on Jingwan's face. Luo Jingying was right. Her face was really tender and flawless. Li Ruyu envied her. She also wanted it, but she couldn't help but want to ruin it when it was on someone else's face. Li Ruyu reached out to pinch Jingwan's face, but Jingwan unceremoniously slapped her away. Li Ruyu widened her eyes in disbelief. Bitch, how dare you hit me? Jingwan was not moved. Your Highness, if you have nothing else to do, please make way. Li Ruyu was furious. No bitch dared to be so rude to her. She forgot that she was actually just a bully who bullied the weak and feared the strong. She dared not provoke those with higher status and strong background. Please excuse me. Jingwan bent her knees and was about to go around them. Stop. Li Ruyu pulled her back, and her group of maidservants automatically blocked the way. 3 months to let the world know that Your Highness is the most qualified imperial daughter. Your Highness came out in less than a month's time. Your etiquette and rules should not be a problem. But now, why haven't you made any progress? Jingwan brushed away Li Ruyu's hand. Li Hongyuan was definitely Li Ruyu's nightmare. She naturally would not forget what she said. Now that she was mentioned by the bitch she hated the most, it could be imagined how angry she was. Mama, Jin Qinwang is also in Great Elder Princess Fu today? replying to Miss, yes. This servant thinks that Jin Qinwang will be very happy to see Ruyu Junju. Li you didn't think that she would actually be threatened. Her teeth clenched so hard that they creaked. But her fear of Li Hongyuan was absolutely bone deep. Hearing the 3 words Jin Qinwang was enough to make her tremble. Hand over the secret formula. Your Highness will present it to the Empress. If you hand it over obediently, Your Highness will let you go today. Li Ruyu told her the real purpose, so Jingwan did not feel strange. Then she looked at Luo Jingying, who shrank behind Li Ruyu and others. Even if she kept her head down and covered her face, both sides of her face were red and swollen. She could not cover it with her hands alone. Was this the result of Luo Jingying's scheming against her? It was really miserable. Your Highness, what if you don't give it to me? Present it to the Empress. Li Ruyu's voice was sharp. Present it to the Empress Mother, what is it? A loud male voice interrupted Li Ruyu's words. Li Ruyu turned around abruptly and saw a group of people coming from the other side of the rockery. She was shocked. Why did they come here? Luo Jingying, on the other hand, was like a frightened rabbit, scurrying to the side. In addition to Great Elder Princess, there were many members of the royal family in this group. But in addition, there were her grandparents, Duke Ding and son Yilin. What happened? Ruyu, what do you want to present to the Empress Mother? What do you want to do in the name of the Empress Mother? Li Hongyi asked unkindly. Li Ruyu stammered and didn't speak. It was not that she didn't want to speak, but that she was too afraid to speak. Li Hongyuan deliberately released her, so he would not lock her back to Commandery Prince Cheng's mansion. So he didn't speak. Besides, he was in a bad mood now, so he was not interested in dealing with insignificant people. Jingwan couldn't calm down. She just wanted to solve this matter as soon as possible, so she stood out and greeted them one by one. It's like this. Commandery Princess Ruyu saw that my skin was better, so she asked me if I had any secret formula to present to the Empress. I thought that the Empress Mother was noble and had her own way of maintaining her skin. How could she use outside things at will? So I didn't say that I wouldn't give it to her. When I was about to explain, Commandery Princess Ruyu became excited. Hearing Jingwan's words, everyone's eyes naturally fell on her face. If they didn't look, they wouldn't know. But when they looked, they found that her skin was not only better, but also unbelievably good. She was just like a baby, but not as fragile and delicate as a baby. Instead, her skin was very textured, like a beautiful jade. The princesses and commandery princesses all envied her. As for Li Ruyu, seeing that she lied without changing her expression, she was so angry that she trembled. She dared to lie to so many nobles and was so bold. This time, she would like to see how she would be killed. If you have a secret formula, take it out. This prince will let someone take a look. If it's really good, this prince will also take it out to show filial piety to mother. You won't be short of benefits, Li Hongyuan said impatiently. Li Ruyu's words were naturally all blocked back. From the beginning, Jingwan had noticed that this prince seemed to be in a bad mood. As per prince's orders. All right, we'll talk about this later. Let's solve the matter of Sun Yijia first. Jingwan felt that the current Li Hongyuan was like a barrel of gunpowder, ready to explode at the slightest touch. But now wasn't the time to care about this. Older sister Jiao. What's wrong with older sister Jiao? But everyone's expression was either real or fake, and no one gave her an answer. Perhaps it was because she was really impatient to the extreme, so she took the lead and walked away. The others could only follow. Jingwan quickly walked to old Madame Luo's side and held her arm. She whispered, "Grandmother, how's your hand?" Old Madame Luo looked at her hand and didn't dare to touch her fingertips. "Grandmother, don't worry. It doesn't hurt much after the medicine was applied." What the hell happened? Old Madame Luo could only sigh and patted her hand. "Don't talk. You'll know in a while." Jingwan pursed her lips. Since it was related to older sister Jiao, there was no reason for her to get involved. The only explanation was that she had a part in it. The place where Jingwan cleaned her wound was the small courtyard by the lake. Now she was still walking in that direction. But when there was still some distance, She turned a corner and walked towards the inner courtyard. It seemed that she didn't enter the inner courtyard. There was also a small courtyard here, which was very similar to the one by the lake. And there was a pond in it, which was directly connected to the lake outside. A small building was built near the water. Now there were several people outside the small building, who seemed to be the servants of Great Elder Princess's mansion. They went directly into the small building. Then, Jingwan saw her brother, who was sitting silently with his head lowered. His clothes were changed, but his hair was still wet. Jingwan's heart trembled. Could it be? When Luo Jinghua saw them, he got up without saying anything. He lifted his clothes and knelt down directly. It was not easy to get angry with him like this. After all, it was Great Elder Princess's mansion. It was not appropriate for others to ask. Because of his good impression of Jingwan, he knew that this was her brother before he came here, so he was quite kind to her. Good girl, tell me, what's going on? Where's Sun Yijia? Call her out and ask her clearly. Li Hongyuan's face was cold and stern. Your Highness. Duchess Ding was indignant. How could a girl face so many people after such a thing happened? Shut up. Perhaps because she heard the noise downstairs, Sun Yijia didn't ask anyone to invite her downstairs and directly came down. She also changed her clothes and wet her hair. Some of her guesses had come true. Who goes first? Compared with Great Elder Princess's gentleness, Li Hongyuan was not good-tempered. Your Highness, I'll go first. Because when my sister was playing the zither, I noticed something wrong with her, so I asked someone and learned that she hurt her hand. I was worried, so I asked her where she was and asked her maid to lead the way to the small courtyard by the lake. However, when they were still some distance away from the small courtyard, they saw the heir of Prince Loyal's mansion enter the small courtyard one after another with several girls. I asked the maid if there was anyone here. The maid said that the feng shui here was not very good and it was very humid. No one would come here except when sweeping every day. When there were banquets, the guests would occasionally change their clothes. When there were no guests, the servants would not be here. I was worried that something would happen, so I asked the maid to call someone and hurried over to have a look. But as soon as I stepped into the small courtyard, I heard someone crying for help and the sound of falling into the water. Seeing that the girl in the water was about to sink into the water, and he couldn't find anything suitable to help her, he became anxious and jumped into the water to save the girl who had fallen into the water. Then he found out that it was Miss Sunday later. Whether it was the maid who led the way for Luo Jinghua or Sun Yijia's maid, they all confirmed that what he said was true. Therefore, Luo Jinghua was not wrong in the whole thing. It could even be regarded as a righteous act. The only wrong thing was that the person he saved was Sun Yijia, Prince Jin's fiancée. If it were another girl, even a maid, it would be easy to deal with. The one with the darkest face now was Prince Zhong. That evil creature, Li Hongyuan looked at Sun Yijia and said, Go ahead. Your Highness, can I say it? I've always been by her side and I know everything. As the biggest victim of this matter, Sun Yijia kept her head down and was silent. She was also somewhat dispirited, like a lotus after a rainstorm. There was no trace of her former charm. Seeing that Li Hongyuan did not say anything, the maid carefully opened her mouth. Miss Luo went to freshen up. Originally, our Miss wanted to follow, but Miss Luo joked that she was worried that Miss would cry when she saw her fingers, so she let Miss stay at the female guest's side. But many people were looking at our Miss and gossiping. Miss also felt bored and decided to go find Miss Luo. When we approached the small courtyard by the lake, a young maid came out of the small courtyard and said that the small courtyard was temporarily used by male guests. Miss Luo came to this small courtyard. Miss believed it and followed the young maid directly to this side and was led upstairs. However, after entering the room, she found that it was empty. Miss said that it was not good and was about to go out when Prince Zhong's heir rushed in. His two manservants grabbed this maid and the young maid. Prince Zhong's heir threw himself at Miss and wanted to do something to Miss. Miss turned and ran. Seeing that the window was open, she directly jumped down and landed in the pond. Therefore, the main cause of the whole matter was clear. Then how should they deal with it? Hongyuan, what do you want to do? Great Elder Princess asked Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan sneered. What do I want to do? Do you think that I can kill both of them? If I want to kill someone, I should kill Uncle Zhong's pig. It's not the first time that this kind of thing has happened. I'm used to it. Speaking of which, Sun Yijia is lucky. The previous ones either died or were injured, or their chastity was inexplicably ruined. None of them had a good ending. Maybe my ability to bring bad luck to my wife is weakening. It should be worth celebrating. Li Hongyuan left in a huff. In the end, he only left a reason: I will report to my father and ask him to withdraw his order. No one knew whether he was being sarcastic or he really thought that it should be celebrated. The last sentence was unquestionable. The people who were left behind looked at each other. Was it over? Sixth brother was not satisfied with this marriage. Now he just pushed the boat with the current. My father has nothing to say, Li Hongyi said. Then, what about now? Great Elder Princess asked, looking at Luo Jingbua, who was still kneeling, and Sun Yijia, who was standing next to him. My daughter, I'll take responsibility. I'll marry her as long as Miss Sun doesn't dislike me. Anyway, I'm not married and have no engagement, Luo Jingbua said without hesitation. Duchess Ding's words were stuck in her throat. In fact, everyone present knew that there was no room for Sun Yijia to dislike him now. She was not the original god's favored daughter. Not only was her face disfigured, but her chastity was also almost ruined. Now she could marry a man like Luo Jingbua. In other people's eyes, it was already a great blessing. Maybe some people even felt that Luo Jingbua was wronged. Good boy, get up quickly. Great Elder Princess helped him up. Lord Luo, what do you think? Luo Peishan nodded and said, the men of the Luo family should be responsible. As for Duke Ding and his wife, well, there was no need to ask for their opinion at all. In addition to agreeing to this marriage, was there a second choice? Of course, they could let Sun Yijia live in seclusion for a lifetime. However, no matter how stupid they were, they would not choose to do so. Luo Jingbua was definitely a good son-in-law, many times better than Prince Jin, although his family background was a little low. For Sun Yijia, it was like rising from the dust to the clouds. But, should we inform Prince Jin about this matter? Madame Luo said. Everyone was silent once again. It was reasonable to say that as long as the emperor took back the order, then Sun Yijia would have the freedom to marry and would have nothing to do with Jin Qinwang. But that person of his, who knew if he would not do things according to common sense? Then, who would inform him was another problem. I'll go, Sun Yilin said. He was still in a state of disbelief. 2 days ago, he was still distressed and confused because his sister fell in love with third young Master Luo and hoped for a turnaround. As a result, everything was achieved today. It was like someone handed him a pillow when he was sleepy. It was so smooth that it was like a dream. In fact, Sun Yijia had the same idea as him. She even pinched herself several times secretly. Sun Yilin wanted to ask Li Hongyuan if this was his doing, but why did it happen to be Luo Jingbua? Moreover, the reason why they were here was Miss Luo, but Miss Luo's playing of the zither was also a temporary reason. Was everything a coincidence? But it was definitely not a coincidence that the heir of Prince Zhongqin wanted to defile his sister. They left the small building. Sun Yilin glanced at his sister who was dawdling, and then at Luo Jingbua who also didn't leave. He sighed in his heart and followed them out. No one noticed Jingwan's sparkling eyes. Third young Master Luo. Sun Yilin looked at Luo Jingbua and subconsciously became cautious. It must be said that Sun Yijia couldn't be blamed for this. The current trend was like this. Even if she was a proud daughter of heaven, at this time, she couldn't help but feel inferior and timid. She couldn't help but worry and be afraid that the person she liked would dislike her. Luo Jingbua didn't know what to say at this time. He suddenly blushed a little and looked at the sky and the ground, but he didn't dare to look at Sun Yijia. That, Miss Sun, I am only a graduate now. This year, I will not participate in the spring imperial examination. But 3 years later, I will definitely. I will work hard and won't let you be wronged. Sun Yijia suddenly began to cry again. However, it wasn't because she felt wronged, but because she was touched and happy. It turned out that when she was nervous, not only did he not dislike her, but he was also worried that he wasn't good enough for her. In his eyes, she was still a proud daughter of heaven, and not a disfigured woman who fell into the dust and was ridiculed and despised by others. Why are you crying? Did I say something wrong? If there's anything wrong with me, just tell me. Don't cry, don't cry. Luo Jingbo was at a loss. He wanted to wipe her tears, but he didn't dare to touch her. His usual carefree demeanor was gone. He was clumsy and stupid. If you don't think it's good, we can postpone the wedding until I pass the Jinsha examination. Sun Yijia subconsciously covered his mouth. I am just too happy. You are very good like this. It doesn't matter if you are a graduate for the rest of your life. Because of the touch on his lips, Luo Jingbo was a little stiff. It was soft and had a little fragrance. He suddenly turned around and fled. Sun Yijia was a little confused, but when she thought of his blushing face, she giggled again. The people outside who hadn't gone far saw Luo Jingbo as if he was being chased by a ghost. What was going on? However, when they saw his embarrassment and thought of Sun Yijia who stayed behind, they didn't think that Sun Yilin was the only one who noticed Sun Yijia's hesitation. There were some things that were better left unsaid. Lord Luo, why does your son seem a little? Li Hongming glanced sideways. It's probably because my second daughter-in-law forgot to arrange a bedchamber for him. Luo Peishan said unconcernedly. The group of experienced princes collectively fell silent. They didn't know if they should be ashamed or despise Luo Jingbo who hadn't eaten meat yet. Luo Jingbo wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, Sun Yilin was a little gratified. His little sister's taste was actually very good. He glanced at Jingwan who was not far away beside Madame Luo and felt a pain in his heart. They met Eunuch Mu who was waiting outside. After greeting him, Eunuch Mu said, Your Highness, our master said that your pig, oh no, presumptuous prince, where is he now? And the cause and effect of this matter, Your Highness, please find out whether someone is targeting our master or Miss Sun and give our master an explanation. Go back and tell Hong Yuan that I'll personally interrogate this matter and make him satisfied. Great Elder Princess said. Yes, I'll tell my master. I'll take my leave now. Jingwan also suspected that this was Li Hongyuan's doing, but it was just a suspicion. Chapter 100. When they came out, they didn't meet Li Ruyu and Luo Jingying. Even though Li Ruyu was angry at Jingwan for lying, she was more afraid of Li Hongyuan, so she took this opportunity to slip away. As for Luo Jingying, she was slapped by Li Ruyu and was too ashamed to see others. Because she betrayed Jingwan, she was lucky enough to escape once and was not further destroyed. However, she was forced to stay by Li Ruyu and didn't dare to run away. She didn't know where Li Ruyu was now. Maybe she left Great Elder Princess's mansion and went back to the Luo family. As for Great Elder Princess, she asked people to take Sun Yijia and Luo Jingbo to freshen up. Especially Sun Yijia, not only Duchess Ding and her servants were there, but Great Elder Princess also sent more servants. Fortunately, people like Sun Yijia would basically prepare 2 sets of clothes when they went out, and they would try to wear the same style and color as much as possible. At this time, she only needed to take the clothes and change the clothes that didn't fit her well. This time, Jingwan took the initiative to stay with Sun Yijia. Although the final result was not bad, Jingwan suffered after all. More or less, Sun Yijia was responsible for it and felt quite guilty. Madame Luo and Great Elder Princess naturally agreed to let Jingwan stay. Even though Duchess Ding had many complicated thoughts about Jingwan, she couldn't say anything at this time. Besides, Jingwan was going to be her daughter's sister-in-law. It was said that mother-in-law was difficult to please and sister-in-law was difficult to deal with. Although this girl was not difficult to deal with, it was better to flatter her a little for the sake of her daughter. Therefore, Duchess Ding was very kind to Jingwan. As for Luo Jingbo's side, Sun Yilin had no choice but to follow him. It was extremely common for a brother-in-law to make things difficult for his brother-in-law. This was because the status of the prospective brother-in-law was too high, and his temper was too difficult to deal with. Even if he was dissatisfied with him, he could only hold his nose and keep quiet. However, Because of the comparison with the previous one, this one was really perfect. In addition, Sun Yilin wasn't a person who liked to tease people. He would at most give a few words of advice to Luo Jingbo. He wouldn't say anything that was slightly excessive. After all the irrelevant people left, Great Elder Princess detained all the servants who knew about this matter and sent someone else to look for the missing princely heir of Prince Loyal. At the same time, she also began to interrogate them. The first one was the little maid who came out of the lakeside courtyard and lied that there was a male guest there to deceive Sun Yijia. At first, the little maid stammered and couldn't tell the reason. Under Great Elder Princess's torture, she finally said that she had received a bribe from princely heir of Prince Loyal and was looking for an opportunity to deceive Sun Yijia. Princely heir of Prince Loyal, who was hiding nearby, was waiting for an opportunity to take action. If what she said was true, then the most important thing now was princely heir of Prince Loyal. Princely heir of Prince Loyal was indeed a fat pig. However, he didn't have the fate of Li Hongyuan, but he had the disease of Li Hongyuan. He was dissolute and lustful and even dreamed of keeping a courtyard of beauties for him to enjoy day and night like Li Hongyuan. However, regardless of his status, he was the princely heir of Prince Loyal. Even if he was not as good as the princely heir of Prince Loyal, he was not inferior to the princely heir of Prince Loyal. However, his physical condition was two extremes. Women avoided him like the plague, and even the women in the brothel despised him. He was not as bold as Li Hongyuan, who dared to casually stretch out his hands. Naturally, the ones who suffered were the maids around him. The range of choices was limited, and naturally, the beauty was greatly reduced. He was still far away from his grand dream, and probably would not have the chance to realize it in this life. Such a person had fantasized about all the noble ladies in the capital, especially Sun Yijia and Wan Fengfei. But he just fantasized about it. At most, he would say a few obscene words when he was drunk with a group of bad friends. Everyone knew his virtue, and Prince Loyal had punished him a lot. However, he was not a righteous man, so he let it go. No matter how powerful princely heir of Prince Loyal was, in fact, he was not very bold. However, no one expected that this time, he was so bold as to stretch out his hands to touch the woman of the King of Hell after Sun Yijia became Li Hongyuan's future wife. Did he eat the bear's heart and leopard's heart eat the bear's heart and leopard's heart? It should be known that when he met Li Hongyuan, he was absolutely like a mouse meeting a cat. Not to mention Prince Loyal, even Great Elder Princess thought that he was likely to be instigated by others, or had been caught and threatened with his life. However, they originally thought that it would be easy to find princely heir of Prince Loyal, but it was not so. He ran away after Sun Yijia fell into the water. They had asked the gatekeeper and didn't see him leave. So he must still be in Great Elder Princess's mansion. There was no need to look at anything else. Just by looking at his body shape, one would be able to recognize him from a distance. This was also the reason why Luo Jingbo had been able to recognize him in an instant. There was no one else with such a body shape in the entire capital. Now, even the backyard was searched, but there was no trace of him. Great Elder Princess and Prince Loyal almost at the same time had an ominous premonition. Continue to search. Don't let go of any place. Wait. Since the accident, no one had seen princely heir of Prince Loyal. It was still the same sentence that no one could ignore him. Search all the flowers and rockery around Linshui house one by one. If you still can't find him, go into the water. At this time, even Princess Loyal also came to her senses and was a little confused. Although she didn't say anything before, she actually didn't care about what happened before. It was her son's blessing that Sun Yijia could fall in love with Sun Yijia, who was disfigured. And it didn't work out in the end, did it? Prince Jin also got what he wanted and kicked Sun Yijia out. It was a happy thing for everyone, but she still made a big fuss about it. What was there to investigate? But now, her son might be gone. Princess Loyal opened her mouth and howled. She changed from a fat lady to a shrew in an instant. Shut up. Prince Loyal frowned tightly. When the former emperor was in power, he was not favored and had to rely on the current emperor, who was still a prince. This princess consort was originally just a merchant's daughter. Her family didn't have much, but they had plenty of money. His imperial brother needed money, so he, as the younger brother, came in handy. He married the merchant's daughter, but for the sake of saving face, before the marriage, he made the merchant's daughter an official. But in essence, it didn't change this woman's vulgarity, uncultured, unscrupulous, and stinking of money. Fortunately, after Emperor Chengdi ascended the throne, he compensated him greatly. His two concubines were both beautiful and well-educated, so he turned from a poor little boy to a real prince. He also changed his title to Prince Loyal, which was much better than other brothers who were much better than him. The only flaw was that the princess couldn't be changed. After all, in order to support the current emperor, Princess Loyal's family almost spent all their wealth. After the legitimate son was born, Emperor Chengdi directly conferred him the title of heir of crown prince. After that, no matter how much he disliked his son's status was unshakable. His princess also took advantage of this and made him suffer a lot. She often acted like a shrew. Originally, after so many years, his princess was a little presentable. As long as she sat properly and spoke as little as possible, those who didn't know her would also praise her for her dignified bearing. Unfortunately, once she opened her mouth, she would definitely expose herself and make him lose face. Now that his son had an accident, how could he expect her to be normal? After being stunned by Prince Loyal's roar, she simply sat down and began to make a scene. My son, you died so miserably. Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for me. Even though Great Elder Princess knew the temperament of the princess consort, she was still stunned by her words and then her face darkened. Come on, block her mouth for me. Although this place was far enough from the flower banquet, with her loud voice, it was possible that her words were heard by those people. Two maids came forward, but they still couldn't stop her. Great Elder Princess's face darkened. Ignoring Prince Loyal, she directly called over two guards who helped to find Princess Loyal, grabbed her arms, and directly pressed her to the ground. Prince Loyal watched, but he was indifferent. He even faintly felt relieved in his heart. The loyal princess was still struggling and glaring at Great Elder Princess. Great Elder Princess gave a stern look and signaled the guards to catch her. Before the princess could stand still, Great Elder Princess slapped her and said, "Do you think you can be so arrogant because of the little help your family gave to my brother? Letting you sit in the position of the princess consort and letting your son be the crown prince for so many years is already a great favor. These years, you have been causing a lot of trouble. No matter how much affection you have, there is no more affection. Even if your son really dies, it will be because of you. Let my brother uphold justice for you." Okay, then let's see how my brother upholds justice for you. Tie her up directly for me. It was a black history that Chengdi let his younger brother marry a merchant's daughter for money. However, he was also a benevolent emperor who didn't burn the bridge after crossing the river. In order to erase the black history, he cut the weeds and dug out the roots. He also gave a lot of rewards. More importantly, he hoped that they would shut up and behave themselves so that some things would be forgotten with time. However, Princess Loyal was never smart and made a lot of trouble. At first, Chengdi asked the Empress to see her. After the Empress became completely impatient, she was forever rejected out of the palace. She still didn't realize that things had changed. This time, if her son was really dead, she would definitely make a big fuss. This matter would certainly be impossible to hide. Prince Jin was framed, Sun Yijia's reputation was damaged, and the Luo family would also be implicated. Moreover, it happened in Great Elder Princess's mansion, so she couldn't get away with it. Maybe this shrew also dug out what happened that year and made it known to everyone. Chengdi would be greatly disgraced. It was one thing that Li Hongyuan disgraced Chengdi again and again, and everyone was used to it. Let others have a try. Your Highness, we found him under the rockery over there. The head of the guards in the mansion came to report in a hurry. Great Elder Princess only needed to look at his face to know that, as she guessed, Prince Jin was probably dead. She glanced at Prince Zhong and said, "Brother, I'm sorry for your loss." Prince Zhong was much calmer than expected. Instead, he was flattered by Great Elder Princess's call of brother. Although they had the same father, Great Elder Princess used to ignore him most of the time. Occasionally, she would call him by his full name. Later, when Le Chengdi ascended the throne, she had been calling him Prince Zhong. Suddenly, she called him brother, wasn't it? Great Elder Princess didn't wait for his response and said, "Let's go and have a look." The leader of the guards wanted to stop her because a dead person was unlucky. However, he thought that Great Elder Princess was not exactly as the rumors said. Judging from her look, it might not be the first time that she had seen a dead person, so he followed her silently. Prince Zhong also followed, but Princess Zhong was tied up and thrown aside like a pig. As expected, the fat princely heir of Prince Zhong was lying in the hollow under the rockery, blocked by a cluster of flowers and trees. How did he die? Great Elder Princess looked at him indifferently and asked calmly. His throat was cut. It was not fatal. But he might have been drugged, so he didn't resist. The head of the guards replied. Great Elder Princess looked at the neck, which was thicker than the waist of ordinary people. With such thick flesh, it was impossible to kill him with a single cut. Did you find anything else? No. Even the footprints on the ground were cleaned. Where are the 2 servants of princely heir of Prince Zhong? I haven't found them yet, but I guess they were killed as well. Great Elder Princess nodded. According to the result of the interrogation of the maid, it could be known that the 2 manservants left after princely heir of Prince Zhongqin, but the interval was very short. It was impossible that they couldn't see their master after coming out. So, they must have been killed together. Sure enough, before long, the bodies of the 2 servants were found in another cluster of flowers. Obviously, the 3 servants didn't die in the hands of the same person. Now, the clues were completely broken. According to the meticulousness of the person behind this, it was difficult to find out who he was. However, they were dead, and they had to give an explanation. Brother, your princely heir of Prince Zhong was immoral in my mansion, so you quarreled with your sister-in-law. She was so angry that she wanted to kill you. Your princely heir intended to stop her, but he was accidentally injured and died. Great Elder Princess said to Prince Zhong. Prince Zhong's heart trembled, and he immediately showed a look of resentment and grief. That shrew is increasingly arrogant and domineering. This time, she even tried to kill her husband. My son was killed because of this. It's, Great Elder Princess nodded with satisfaction. My sister-in-law is so immoral and killed people. Naturally, she doesn't deserve to be the daughter-in-law of the royal family. You have suffered a lot these years. I'll ask my brother to choose a young, beautiful, gentle and well-educated new princess for you. With such an understatement, this matter was decided. The most innocent person was probably the loyal princess consort. But, was she really innocent? If she had taught her son well and knew how to restrain himself, he wouldn't have. The real culprit behind this must be found out. Such a cruel person should be severely punished. Li Hongyuan and the others had already returned to their original seats. Although they left separately one after another and didn't show too much expression when they left, it was inevitable that they would attract attention because of their noble status. For a time, all kinds of speculations came one after another. But they didn't say anything, so no one dared to ask anything. Because Sun Yijia had to bathe, change clothes, dry her hair and dress up, it naturally took a long time. When they appeared, Great Elder Princess had even taken a seat before them. And Li Ruyu also returned to her mother. She had no choice. Few girls of high status were willing to stay with her, and she didn't want to be with those of low status. When she saw Jingwan and the others appear, her eyes were full of poison. As for Luo Jingying, she didn't see anyone as expected. When passing by a group of noble ladies, Jingwan accidentally glanced at a round red dot on a maid's embroidered shoes. It was as red as blood and so uncoordinated. What kind of hobby was this? But Jingwan just glanced at it and then let it go. Sister Luo, you're finally back. Why did you take so long? Yu Yarrow trotted up and pulled Jingwan's clothes. Aya, old master Yu Yarrow, don't you know that us girls are very troublesome? Jing Wan winked at her. Yu Yarrow looked confused and didn't know why, But the others couldn't help laughing. No matter a girl or a married woman, some things were very troublesome. Great Elder Princess summoned Jingwan and Sun Ijia to the front and held Jingwan's hand first. Her 10 fingers were all bandaged, so the specific injuries couldn't be seen. You're just a girl who likes to show off. If the zither is not good, you can change it. Jingwan smiled and said, I'm afraid that I can't play it so well with another zither. I was shocked. You're praising yourself. Don't you feel ashamed? Great Elder Princess pointed at her. Your humble servant is not boasting. Your humble servant has never been able to play that song in its entirety before. Great Elder Princess nodded and said, it's really difficult, not to mention that some people can't get into that state in their whole life. Do you know Elder Jiang, who is known as the zither addict? Jingwan nodded. He exchanged the zither score with your grandfather before and even gave up a centuries-old white peony in the old house of the Jiang family. Yu Yaro's father was very distressed. If he didn't know that you gave him a centuries-old white peony, he would have made a scene. Great Elder Princess couldn't help laughing. Jingwan was surprised. A centuries-old white peony was very attractive to Jingwan. However, she said, the zither score is not mine. Since Elder Jiang likes it, I can make a copy and give it to him. I don't need to exchange it. Actually, she learned it from her grandma in her previous life. Originally, she didn't want to take it out, but she was forced to fight back fiercely. Otherwise, people would think that she was a good person. Since he had already played it once in public, there was no need for him to hide it anymore. That's what they exchanged. We don't care. You just need to give the zither score to your grandfather. But why hasn't such a good song been released yet? Jingwan hesitated for a moment. If she were to tell a lie, she would need to cover it up in a hurry. Not to mention how tiring it would be, she might not even be able to pull it off. It's an ancient zither song. Then it's no wonder. It must have been lost before it could spread. Now that it's in your hands and reappeared in the light of day through your hands, it's your luck, and also the blessing of that song. What's the name of the song? Ambush on 10 Sides. It was originally a peeper song. Great Elder Princess was stunned. Ambush on 10 Sides? Peeper song? No wonder. No wonder. It should be like this. It should be like this. In the war between Khan and Chu, King Chu won. Someone used a peeper song to depict the majesty of the victorious master, who was full of majesty and austere, and named it Ambush on 10 Sides. But it was said that the master was persecuted by the defeated army, and the song was lost. It's not that no one has found it, but it's said that he once had a servant who fled to the area of Qian Prefecture. Now it seems that the song was most likely taken away by the servant. Jingwan was speechless. It turned out that there was such a similar history here. Then she didn't need to make up a story. So there is such a history? She replied dryly. Since you know that it was originally a peeper song, do you still have the original score? The original score was seriously damaged. At that time, I was still young and didn't know its value. When I saw that the paper was so damaged that I couldn't even pick it up, Great Elder Princess sighed. What a pity. But I was learning to read at that time. When I saw the strange shape on the paper, I copied it down. Jingwan smiled mischievously. Great Elder Princess was slightly stunned and then burst into laughter. You deserve to be beaten. In fact, Jingwan's words were not completely groundless. When she was a child, she looked for a lot of books in a mess. Madame Luo also knew that she liked to copy some strange things, so she didn't ask her too much. Moreover, it was said that she copied it, not the original. Naturally, no one deliberately looked for her to see if she really copied such a thing. I don't know who adapted it into a zither song, but it is also very good. When your hand recovers, you can write down both scores. As for why she didn't show it to the teacher when she was learning the zither, it was probably that the little girl had realized the preciousness of the score and knew to hide it. Or she forgot it and then accidentally found it later. Look, Jingwan didn't need to make up these things. Others had already imagined it for her. 99 steps had been taken. Naturally, The last step would not be missed. Jingwan agreed. Great Elder Princess looked at Sun Yijia again. You have to be careful in the future. Today, if it weren't for... At this point, she immediately stopped, but it was enough to let others' imagination run wild. Sun Yijia was a little embarrassed and said yes in a low voice. Some people couldn't help but be curious and had already asked. However, they were all directly dismissed by Great Elder Princess. Unable to get the answer, they couldn't help but look at Sun Yijia with inquiring eyes. After a closer look, they found some clues. It seemed that she didn't wear the same clothes before. Had she changed? And one of the hairpins on her head seemed to be missing. No one would believe that nothing had happened since she came back after such a long time. On the other side, Ruan Fengfei seemed to be staring at Sun Yijia in a daze. A commandery princess beside her noticed it. Thinking of the relationship between them, she came to her ear and whispered, although she is the legal wife and you are the concubine, she is disfigured. How can she compete with you? I'm afraid that Prince Jin won't even touch her. In the future, you will have the final say in Prince Jin's mansion. Ruan Fengfei blushed and whispered, don't talk nonsense. After all, she is the legal wife. After saying that, she seemed to be a little lonely. Seeing her like this, as a good friend of hers, she felt very distressed and felt very unfair for her. His Majesty is really too much. Not only did he bestow you to marry Prince Jin, he even, shut up. If others hear it, the commandery princess curled her lips and didn't dare to continue. Only you have such a temper. Yes, she didn't have a good temper. Because of his good nature, in order to prevent Sun Yijia from suffering, he even gave her a special medicine for women. As long as she took a whiff, she would feel weak and light up. Unfortunately, that pig was too stupid. She was already in such a state, but she still managed to escape. She didn't drown to death, but was saved by someone. However, even if she felt a little regretful, it didn't matter. She just took it that she wasn't destined to die, as long as she didn't stand in her way. A maid hurried to Great Elder Princess's side and whispered something in her ear. Great Elder Princess's face suddenly changed. It was many times worse than the last time when she left the banquet. She left in a hurry. At the same time, they seemed to faintly hear crying from the other side of the lake. This commotion wasn't ordinary. What exactly was going on? However, before they could listen carefully, there was no sound. After all, it was too serious. Even if Great Elder Princess wanted to hide it, she couldn't. Princely heir of Prince Zhongqin took a maid of Great Elder Princess's mansion and wanted to do something improper. It was reported to Great Elder Princess, so Great Elder Princess went to have a look. As for the other people who were alarmed, it was because of another thing that happened. Only Prince Zhongqin, his wife, and Great Elder Princess didn't return. Great Elder Princess couldn't mediate, so she simply didn't care. However, she didn't expect that soon after she left, someone died. Princely heir of Prince Zhongqin was dead. This Princess Zhongqin was too. As for the other thing, there was a little trace. The legitimate daughter of Duke Ding went to find the third daughter of the Luo family and accidentally fell into the water. She was saved by the third son of the Luo family who happened to go to see his sister. Haha, this was really... Jingwan and Sun Yijia looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. As clever people, they naturally guessed what was going on. They didn't expect that the behind-the-scenes person was so vicious that she directly killed the witness. Now, it was nothing more than the result of Great Elder Princess's arrangement. She wanted to divide one thing into two things. However, they didn't quite understand why Princess Zhongqin was used as a scapegoat. Sun Yijia more or less knew the temperament of Princess Zhongqin. She didn't know whether this factor was in it, but it was definitely not so simple. As for the male guests, as the previous participants, they were well aware of it. However, even if they knew the truth, they wouldn't be stupid enough to say it out. It should be said that the prince consort didn't go before, but Great Elder Princess sent someone to tell him the whole story. He hated people like princely heir of Prince Zhongqin the most. As for Princess Zhongqin, he didn't care about her at all since he didn't know her. He had no objection to Great Elder Princess's punishment at all. It's quite lively today. One wave has yet to subside, and another wave has come, Li Hongyuan said casually. At the moment when he knew that princely heir of Prince Zhongqin was dead, Li Hongyuan was not surprised at all. This was his usual style. However, others didn't dare to say anything. Who knew if he was angry at this moment? Even if he didn't like Sun Yijia, she was his fiancée after all. She was carried out of the water by another man. Any man would care about it, right? However, who knew if he treated Sun Yijia the same as those women before? How straightforward he was to give those beauties away. Therefore, it was really hard to tell whether he cared about it or not. Duke Ding, when you marry your daughter, don't forget to invite me to the wedding banquet. After all, she is my 7th fiancée. The previous 6 fiancés didn't have this blessing. Maybe after I drink her wedding banquet, I can drink my own wedding banquet next time. Li Hongyuan's voice was flat. His words should be regarded as self-mockery, but it made people feel gloomy. How would Duke Ding respond to him? Good or bad? Luo Peishan stroked his beard and said, "If your highness doesn't mind, you can come to the Luo family for the wedding banquet." Li Hongyuan clicked his tongue. It's still you, this old man, who is more straightforward. Well, the main character had admitted it. It seemed that there was no need to guess. However, it seemed that the marriage between Duke Ding and the Luo family didn't need to be specifically asked for his opinion. Moreover, if the two families were married, did it mean that the Luo family would lean towards the Empress and Prince Kang? This kind of big news, under the manipulation of some people, also spread among the female guests. The way they looked at Sun Yijia changed again. There was no lack of busybodies who thought that Sun Yijia didn't want to marry Prince Jin and deliberately put on such a show. As for why she chose Luo Sangongzi, wasn't he her good sister's brother? It would be easier for him to accept her. It must be said that when she was ridiculed for her disfigurement, she didn't react. Now, she was a little flustered. Therefore, this was the difference between caring and not caring. Because she cared about Luo Jinghua, she hoped that in his heart, she was a perfect girl and not as unbearable as these people said. Jingwan lightly patted her back, "Don't mind it." Sun Yijia subconsciously relaxed a little. However, the Junju beside Wan Fengfei sneered, "She has a good life, but this is also good. No one will fight with you. Maybe Prince Jin will directly marry you and let you be his Wang Fei." "Ari, don't. It's better to be at Sefei. Prince Jin's fate is too hard. What if he jinxes you again? Although at Sefei's status is a bit worse, there won't be any danger of jinxing you. There's also no need to worry about someone pressing down on your head." This Junju naturally didn't notice that when she said these words, in the first half, Wan Fengfei was still smiling sincerely. In the second half, it was as if there was an evil spirit condensing in the depths of her eyes, ready to crawl out and devour people at any time. Zhang Fei or Cefei, this needs to be decided by the emperor. Feng Fei, why don't you also imitate that person? The Junju leaned over to Wan Fengfei's ear and looked at Sun Yijia. The evil spirit in Wan Fengfei's eyes was ready to move. She finally entered Prince Jin's Wangfu with great difficulty and became the woman of the man she admired. To let her give up, "Do you want to die?" She gently opened her mouth and said, "I can't. I can't frame my father for injustice." Besides, she hurt her face. Prince Jin might not care and let go so easily, but I might not. The Junju nodded. She didn't feel that Wan Fengfei was narcissistic, but felt that her words were very correct. She didn't notice that Wan Fengfei was indirectly saying that this matter was indeed caused by Sun Yijia herself. She couldn't smoothly marry someone else. However, there were also people who felt that this matter wasn't right. For example, Li Yu. It seemed that what she encountered didn't match up with the rumors. However, she was smart for once and didn't stupidly say it out loud. Instead, she leaned over and whispered it to her mother. Princess Consort Cheng was so angry that she almost fainted because of this daughter. She even did such a thing behind her back. "If you don't want to die, swallow it back. Don't mention it to anyone." Don't mention it. But mother, that bitch, don't mention it. She now has the support of Great Elder Princess. Besides, you still dare to covet what Li Hongyuan asked for. How many lives do you have? This one-track-minded daughter clearly realized that something was wrong, but she still focused on other things. Really, as soon as Li Hongyuan's name came out, Li Yu was so scared that she shrank her neck and didn't dare to say anything. If the secret recipe is so good, it won't be leaked out after entering the palace. You will get it. Really? Li Yu was a little surprised. Princess Consort Cheng was also helpless. Because of this daughter, she was disliked everywhere. She had Ding General Manor and the Empress as her backers, but she was still bullied everywhere. Although Yu was a little arrogant, she shouldn't be like this. Why did it get worse and worse? It seemed that it started from her daughter's clamor to marry Brother Lin. Don't think about your Brother Lin in the future. Mother, what did you say? Li Yu suddenly raised her voice, which attracted the attention of the people around. Princess Consort Cheng hurriedly covered her mouth. Facing the dissatisfied eyes of others, she could only bite the bullet and smile apologetically. It's impossible between you and him. Just give up. If you don't want your position as a princess and want your father to be stripped of his title, then go ahead and make a scene. You'll probably be happy if you destroy our family. Li Yu was stunned. How could it be so serious? But her mother didn't seem to be lying. Mother, it's not because of me, right? No, Princess Consort Cheng just glanced at her indifferently and said nothing. Li Yu was scared. She was promoted to Infanta because of her aunt, the Empress. If she lost her title, she would be like those bitches. No, she didn't want to be like this. This time, Great Elder Princess came back quickly. Looking at her undulating chest, one could tell that she was very angry. Yu Yao, where is your game? Go on. Great Elder Princess said coldly. Well, as the birthday girl, it was reasonable that Great Elder Princess didn't want to be disbanded in such an unlucky way. They all shut up and stopped talking about these disappointing things. Great Elder Princess directly took a piece of wood and turned it over. It was third Miss Luo. Then she smiled and said, "Oh, it's you again. Do you want to perform?" Great Elder Princess, I have a suggestion. What do you think? What good ideas do you have? Just tell us. It's fun to get rid of the bad luck. We're just having fun here, yet we're letting them laugh at us. Jing Wan glanced at the male guests. It's too unfair. We should let them make a fool of themselves so that we can have some fun too. That's a good idea. Servants, prepare the wood pieces and send them over there. Let the childs write their names on them. If they don't want to, don't force them. Tell them that if they do well today, I'll directly report their names to His Majesty. This time, most of them would be willing to do it. The maids took the wood pieces, brushes, and ink, divided into several teams, and began to write together. It didn't take much time. On the other side, under Jingwan's suggestion, they began to make a punishment program. Sister Luo, what good ideas do you have? Yu Yarrow pulled Jingwan's clothes and was very excited. Jingwan was all smiles, but everyone could tell that she was up to no good. How about a green waist dance? Green waist. But suddenly, they thought that it was a punishment for the male guests. They looked at each other and imagined the scene. It seemed to be very interesting. Great Elder Princess was very happy and directly made the decision. Then, wear women's clothes. This could be done. Appoint another child to drink a jar of wine. This could be done. A bowl of special drink. Then Jingwan calmly told them how to make it. When Jingwan finished, they all stared at her in disbelief. It was too bad. Jingwan smiled. It was nothing. Because of many taboos, she didn't dare to say the really bad things. Perhaps inspired by Jingwan, the others also came up with bad ideas one after another. Because they were laughing so happily, the male guests were confused. Why did they feel a chill on their backs? The male guests were basically done. What about me? The maids looked at each other and then looked at Li Hongyuan. Your Highness, what? In your eyes, am I not a child? They had to hand the things over with trembling hands. Li Hongyuan wrote his name quite elegantly. Li Hongming suddenly smiled. Why don't I have some fun? Although I've got a family, it shouldn't be a problem. Therefore, with these two people taking the lead, the other princes, whether married or not, all joined in. When the maids took the wood pieces back, their hands and feet were still a little trembling. After asking, they knew the reason. How should they play this time? Great Elder Princess sent another maid. Tell the content of the punishment to all the princes and princes. If you don't pass my words, you are a coward. Take the wood pieces back. If you don't blame me for going to the palace to talk to His Majesty. Therefore, Great Elder Princess was the most domineering and powerful. Even though he only sent the message to Lechengdi's sons, the other young nobles all had a green expression. Unfortunately, Great Elder Princess didn't even give them a chance to be cowards. In contrast, Li Hongyuan became the most leisurely one. The game began. But the wooden pieces were put in cloth bags. They shook them first and then reached in to take one. Instead of the nobles taking the wood pieces, the girls took them one by one. Those princesses and infanta had been eager to have a try. There was no such fun in the palace, so they naturally didn't hesitate at this time. The first one to take out the wood piece was a chubby boy of 11 or 12 years old. When the news spread to the male guests, they roared with laughter. The chubby boy walked to the female guests' seats with a sad face. I don't know how to do anything. Just punish me directly. Everyone was overjoyed. Great Elder Princess also waved her hand and agreed. The chubby boy probably thought that it was the same anyway. He had made a fool of himself in daily life. So, he casually grabbed a pouch of punishment and then waited for the judgment of fate. After the little maid opened it and saw it, she covered her mouth and laughed. Master, you have to eat 4 drumsticks. The chubby boy was stunned at first, and then his eyes lit up. Really 4 drumsticks? Oh, for a fat boy like you, it's not a punishment at all. Great Elder Princess laughed so hard that she couldn't straighten up. Your family usually doesn't allow you to eat more. Today, I decide to give you 2 more drumsticks. This time, little Fatty was overjoyed. Then, he carried his 6 drumsticks and went back happily. When the men in the male guests' seats saw the chubby boy, whose eyes were narrowed into slits with laughter, eating while walking, the corners of their mouths twitched. Of course, there were also those old adults who looked at him happily. Oh, it was a blessing to be able to eat. Only the chubby boy's grandfather, who was indeed a blessing to be able to eat 8 meals a day, was still full like a bottomless pit. If he continued to eat like this, he would not be worried that the family would be poor. Instead, they were worried that he would become the second princely heir of the loyal prince. Bah, he would be a dead man now. But now they couldn't stop him from eating. This boy is lucky. For others, a few drumsticks are definitely a punishment, but for him, it's a great benefit. Before they finished talking, the second person had been taken out. Even if they looked calm, they were still a little uneasy. There was no other way. Even if they were talented people, they were not omniscient and omnipotent. If they picked something that they didn't know how to do, they would still be punished. Who was the second unlucky guy or the lucky one? Sun Yilin. In fact, Sun Yilin and Luo Jinghua had just returned not long ago. Naturally, after such a long time, they wouldn't be talking about Sun Yijia. It could be said that the two of them had written their names on the piece of wood without knowing what was going on. Sun Yilin could only shake his head helplessly when he found out what was going on, but Luo Jinghua didn't seem to care. Sun Yilin didn't expect that he would be picked so soon. Everyone looked at the famous young Master Lin in the capital. Speaking of which, the probability of him being punished shouldn't be high. However, there were more people who wanted to see him make a fool of himself. It wasn't entirely out of malice, but purely because they wanted to see how this young master would look like when he made a fool of himself. Seeing Sun Yilin appear, the girls in the female guest seats were a little excited. This was known as a peerless gentleman. He seemed to be proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, and singing. It was not easy to see him displaying his talent in public. It was definitely a great enjoyment. However, they wanted to see him being punished even more. What should they do? Even Sun Yijia was whispering in Jingwan's ear. She was also a person who wanted to see the world in chaos. Great Elder Princess, I think the girls all want to see our young Master Lin being punished. Why don't we punish him directly? A princess of the same generation as Great Elder Princess joked. Sun Yilin repeatedly bowed and begged for mercy. Please be merciful. It's not up to us whether we can be merciful or not. It depends on your luck. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and pick. Sun Yilin had to pick a purse. The maid opened it and said, Master, it's archery. Sun Yilin obviously breathed a sigh of relief. Although he was not as good at archery as other skills, he was not weak after all. Young Master Lin, don't be happy too early. Archery is not as simple as ordinary targets. If you don't do it well, you will also be punished. A princess smiled and kindly reminded him. Although Sun Yilin had been mentally prepared, he was still a little scared. The selection of bows was relatively large, and there was no fixed rule. He took the bow and went to the flower bed. Then, a group of fully armed kittens and puppies were brought out. A red or green fruit was fixed on the head of each of them, and they were encircled in a certain range on the shore. The requirement was that he had to shoot all the green fruits within half an hour. Any arrow that hit a small animal would fail. There were only 3 green fruits. Logically speaking, it was not difficult. But Sun Yilin looked at the arrows that had been treated in order not to hurt the small animals, and the little thing that ran away as soon as he let go. It seemed that God wanted him to die today. Chapter 101. Sun Yilin narked an arrow and drew his bow, aiming at one of the little guys with a green fruit on its head. It must be said that compared to the red ones, the green ones were more difficult. After all, they were not as conspicuous. Moreover, there were a lot of red ones. They were scattered everywhere and obstructed one's line of sight. It was not enough to only focus on one little guy. If one was not careful and accidentally shot another one would be punished directly. He released the arrow. With a swoosh, everyone stared at the little guys closely. Did he hit or not? After all, the male guest seats were relatively far away. The group of young masters tried their best to get closer. Unfortunately, they could not get past the seats of the nobles. They leaned against the stone railings with exquisite relief sculptures by the lake and stretched their necks. From time to time, the people in front would be pulled on the head by the people behind. This scene was really... A group of people shook their heads. Did he hit? No, that little guy suddenly stopped. The arrow flew past the fruit. What a pity. If he did not stop, he would have hit. Sun Yilin was also helpless as the little guy looked at him with a tilted head. The little guy's eyes seemed to be asking him, "Hey, what are you doing?" Asking him to knock an arrow again seemed to make him feel guilty. This was the disadvantage of domesticated animals compared to wild animals. Moreover, domesticated animals were not afraid of humans. Whether they ran or stopped depended on their preference. It was harder to deal with them than if they kept running or stopping. Fortunately, this arrow had been modified. Otherwise, Sun Yilin could not guarantee that he could continue. Time waits for no one. Sun Yilin took advantage of the little guy's daze and quickly shot another arrow. Good. Both the male and female VIP seats applauded and cheered at the same time. Sun Yilin, on the other hand, was sweating profusely. He had almost shot the little fellow's head. Sun Yilin looked at the incense stick. It took less time than expected. However, when he took out the arrows again, there were only 3 arrows left. He suddenly realized something. Although there was no rule saying that he could only shoot a few arrows, it was obvious that there were only 5 arrows. Did it mean that he only had 5 chances and could miss twice at most? The modified arrow was originally lighter and its lethality was only equivalent to 10% of the original. If he did not control it well, it would probably not even pierce the skin of the fruit. It would definitely not be considered a hit. Which great-aunt came up with this idea? Jingwan sat there calmly. Sorry, she couldn't accept Sun Yilin's resentment. The people here had no awareness of protecting animals. Even if they were domesticated, if they were not favored by their masters, they would never be treated well. It was common for them to be abused or beaten to death. Although these little animals looked good, she was sure that they were not favored by any of the masters in Great Elder Princess's mansion. If they were here, they would probably ignore the lives of these little animals. However, Jingwan couldn't bear to see them in danger of being shot to death under her nose. It was one thing if she didn't meet them, but now that she met them, she couldn't remain indifferent. The words increased the difficulty dispelled everyone's doubts. On the male guest's side, those who had a little eyesight had already found the problem after Sun Yilin shot the first arrow. They almost unanimously thought that it was to increase the difficulty. Only Li Hongyuan murmured in an almost inaudible voice, "He is still so soft-hearted." Sun Yilin's third arrow was very successful. He hit the fruit with one shot. All the childs applauded him. Although they wanted to see him make a fool of himself, he was also the model of this group of people. If he made a fool of himself, it might affect the image of everyone in the girls' hearts. He only needed one more arrow to succeed. Unfortunately, the wish was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Sun Yilin's fourth arrow missed the fruit again. When they saw the last arrow in the quiver, they all broke out in a cold sweat for him. Probably because it was the most critical arrow, everyone held their breath and stared at him nervously. They even didn't dare to make a sound, as if they were afraid of disturbing him. Good. Alas, before he could finish the word good, the arrow, which was obviously going to the fruit, touched it gently and fell down. Obviously, it was not powerful enough. It was such a pity. He was just a little bit away, how could he? Alas, the first person to shout for him to come down and receive his punishment was followed by more and more people. Since the matter was settled, they just had to happily watch how this young Master Lin would make a fool of himself. Only Jingwan slightly narrowed her eyes and glanced at the incense. Sun Yilin did the same thing. Sister Jiao, don't be anxious. It's not over yet. Hey! Sun Yijia didn't understand. Sun Yilin quickly ran down the parterre and bent down to pick up the arrow closest to him. He returned to the parterre at an even faster speed and knocked the arrow. With a whoosh, the last green fruit was directly pierced through. Hey, it can be done like this? Many people asked this question. Sun Yilin stood on the parterre and smiled as he watched the last spark of the incense extinguish. An old man stroked his beard. The rule is to shoot arrows from the parterre and hit all the green fruits within half an incense's time. If any arrow hits a small animal, it will be considered a failure. It didn't say that under this premise, one can't come down and retrieve the arrow. Although my eyesight isn't good and I can't see the specific situation of the incense, it seems like it was a success. This young Master Sun is quick-witted. I don't know if it was purposely set up like this. If it is, the person who set it up is also intelligent. After this explanation, many people were enlightened. They only saw 5 arrows and assumed that only 5 arrows could be shot. They forgot to link the rules together. As expected of young Master Lin, then, was it purposely set up like this? In fact, at the female guest seating area, almost everyone didn't expect this result. They didn't hear about this situation before. How were they going to calculate this? However, the maid standing next to the incense burner said very calmly, "Young Master Sun Yilin is in line with the rules. It's done." It seemed that she was completely aware of this situation. But she was just a little maid. If she hadn't been instructed in advance, even if she had thought of it, she wouldn't have dared to announce the result on her own. She had to ask for the opinions of the nobles first. Obviously, this was a deliberate setup. It not only tested one's archery ability, but also one's ability to react on the spot. Of course, if one met someone who was very good at archery and could hit the target every time, the following setup would be superfluous. Great Elder Princess looked at Jingwan thoughtfully. Girl Luo, is this your idea again? Jingwan smiled calmly. If it's not a game but a real hunting or even a battlefield, I believe everyone knows what to do, right? Even if the rules of the game are included, you can be more flexible and not so rigid, right? Sun Yilin had already come down from the parterre. Hearing this, he said, Miss, you're so quick-witted that even I was almost fooled. This was purely a compliment. Jingwan smiled faintly. However, some people felt that Jingwan was particularly annoying. Great Elder Princess laughed heartily. Well, you're all smart. You'll be rewarded. You'll all be rewarded. The maid carried up another tray that others didn't know about and sent it to Sun Yilin. You may take what I said just now as empty words. What we carry are all women's household items. It's not suitable for you, so it's inconvenient for us to give them to you. So, Girl Luo gave me an idea. I came up with the same idea. I wrote a note and put it in the purse. But there are only 10 things in total. There are 10 purses. If you take one away, there will be one less. You can take one and go to His Majesty to get the reward another day. As for you, you probably don't care much about it, but you're allowed to give the purse away. This meant that Great Elder Princess's promise of reporting to His Majesty if she performed well had been changed into an actual benefit. It should be known that if Great Elder Princess just reported it to His Majesty and forgot about it, or His Majesty forgot about it, there was nothing she could do about it. But now, it was different. She could ask His Majesty for a reward in person with a purse. It was one thing to get something good, but more importantly, she could meet His Majesty. It was needless to say which one would leave a deeper impression on His Majesty just by hearing a name or meeting him in person. In this way, even if there was a huge risk of being embarrassed, the young masters in the male guest seats would still hope that they could be chosen. It would be impolite of me to refuse. Sun Yilin took out a purse and then sincerely bowed to Jingwan. I thank you on behalf of the 10 young masters. This was a real gratitude to Jingwan. Jingwan hurriedly avoided it. I don't deserve your thanks. It's all Great Elder Princess's credit. I just said a few words. You deserve it. Why not? Sun Yilin wanted it, but Great Elder Princess also wanted it. Only families with titles of nobility could benefit their descendants. Other families, even the elders of the inner cabinet, could only rely on their descendants' own efforts to make progress. When they entered the officialdom, their fathers and grandfathers could help them. Moreover, every family wanted to gain benefits for their own families, so the competition was very fierce. The reward this time could save 10 people's hard work for 10 or 20 years. If the reward was out of Great Elder Princess's mansion and fell into the hands of a poor child, it was more likely to be a chance for him to soar to the sky. In that case, it was not just a person who owed Jingwan a favor, but a whole family or even a whole family. This was not only a hypothesis, but was likely to come true in this place where clans were highly valued. Jingwan probably just came up with this idea on the spur of the moment and didn't think too far ahead. She just thought that it would be a pity to bury some people who might not be good at studying but were really talented. If she could help one of them, she might find a great talent for the Qi Yuan dynasty. She just mentioned it and didn't expect that Great Elder Princess would agree. Now, not only did she directly expose her, but also confirmed that it was her credit, which made Jingwan feel a little helpless. Seeing her like this, Great Elder Princess knew that she must have understood the interests in this matter. She didn't feel proud or complacent, and there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. It was really rare to see a girl who could see through things and was not easily blinded by interests. Great Elder Princess didn't break the convention in vain and clearly showed her love for her. Don't worry. Even if the sky falls down, there will be someone taller to hold it up. Jingwan laughed. It had already happened, so there was no need to think more about it. Great Elder Princess saw that she regained her composure so quickly and couldn't help nodding in her heart. Okay, Luo, you can also take one of the rewards. I can't accept it. Jingwan hurriedly refused. Why can't I accept it? I just said that there will be rewards for all of you, just for your good idea. Besides, I haven't rewarded you with the song just now. Take this as a reward. At this point, Jingwan had to take a purse and said, "Thank you, great elder princess." Before Sun Yilin returned to the male guest seats, the news of the reward of 10 purses had been spread all over the place. Sure enough, many young masters were very excited and expectant. They were no longer nervous as before. After seeing that Sun Yilin really came back with a purse, their eyes were particularly hot. Sun Yilin seemed to feel that it was inappropriate and put the purse into his sleeve. Luo Peishan finally knew why Diwu Taiqing always pulled his beard. He also wanted to pull his beard now. It was a good thing that his child was outstanding and in the limelight, but too much of the limelight would make people feel confused. Why did such a thing happen unconsciously? His colleagues kept glancing at him with resentful little eyes. They enjoyed it but also felt uncomfortable. Lord Luo raised a good granddaughter. Diwu Taiqing didn't mind the chaos and said faintly. Luo Peishan glared at him. What a sissy old bastard. That's the opportunity given by Great Elder Princess. If your girl didn't mention it, would Great Elder Princess give such a reward? My girl just happened to be there at the right time. If it were someone else, it would be the same. Old bastard, shut up. But it's not someone else. That girl's surname is Luo. Besides, even if others often appear in front of Great Elder Princess, they don't seem to be favored by Great Elder Princess. Such banquets have been held many times. Why didn't anyone mention it? It's one thing to not think of it. Even if you think of it, you don't have the courage to say it. Besides, it's a good thing to benefit everyone. We old guys only think of making profits for our own families and never think of others. Diwu Taiqing seemed to be envious, but he was reminding others that Jingwan played a key role in this matter. Although Great Elder Princess had to build the ladder in the end, without Jingwan, the key first step, there would be no later things. Therefore, the person who benefited in the end must be grateful. Lord Diwu, you think too much. My girl didn't think so much. I may believe you if you say that to others, but I've seen this girl with my own eyes. If you say that she didn't even think of this, Diwu Taiqing stroked his beard and smiled, I don't believe you at all. Luo Peishan gritted his teeth and lowered his voice, that's enough. Diwu Taiqing stroked his beard and nodded. Well, it was almost enough. Lord Luo, I wonder if the third miss of your mansion has been engaged? Li Hongming suddenly asked. Third brother, you've gone too far. Li Hongyi immediately retorted. Although the marriage between that bastard Li Hongyuan and his cousin had not been cancelled, it was already set in stone. It was also a fact that his cousin would marry into the Luo family. In this case, he had already included the Luo family in his line. Now that there was such a girl who might be indebted to many people, how could he let Li Hongming win her over? Eldest brother, why are you so excited? As the saying goes, a good girl is sought after by many families. This is a very normal thing, isn't it? Yes, this was indeed a very normal thing. As long as she was not engaged, as long as there was a suitable man in her family, he could go to her family to ask for her hand in marriage. Even the emperor had no right to interfere. Li Hongyi was so angry that his eyes widened. Thank you for your kindness, your highness. My third daughter has already been betrothed to someone else. Many people sighed in their hearts. It was a pity that such a girl could be married without any harm. Oh, I wonder which family he is from. Li Hongming glanced at the young masters present. Your Highness, you don't need to look for him. He hasn't come to Great Elder Princess's mansion. Was it because he didn't come or because he was not qualified? The former was actually less likely, unless he suddenly fell ill. Otherwise, on such an occasion, basically no one would refuse. Did it mean that he was not qualified? Why did Lord Luo choose such a poor family for his granddaughter? However, Lord Luo's second son was actually a little similar to the general's son-in-law. In this case, it was not impossible for his granddaughter to marry into a poor family. That brat had really picked up a big bargain. Li Hongyuan supported his chin with one hand, his entire body lazy. However, Someone had stabbed his weak spot again. He really wanted to kill all the people who were spying on his family's WNWAN. WNWN, why didn't I see you make such a big commotion in your previous life? However, it doesn't matter. No matter how big the commotion you make, this prince will take care of it for you. No matter how elegant you are, feel free to show it. Whoever dares to stretch out their claws, they will be chopped up. In fact, there were people on the male guest's side who were tempted, but there were also women on the side. However, because there were people who knew about Jingwan's engagement before, there was no need for Madame Luo to explain. The news quickly spread, and Chen Jingmin's identity was naturally exposed. Especially the woman who had been humiliated by Madame Luo before, her voice was the loudest. Those who were originally jealous because of Jingwan's great limelight now only had ridicule and ridicule left. The maidens of the inner residence, before they got married, they competed with nothing more than family background. After they became nuns, they competed with nothing more than their husbands. They only knew how to show off their beautiful things, and the pain and suffering would only rot and mold in their hearts. It must be said that these people were really bored. Their material lives were satisfied, but unfortunately, their spiritual lives were too lacking. That was why they would listen to the wind and rain, and if they didn't say a few words, they would die. Her relatives and friends were originally worried that Jingwan would be upset, but she looked very calm. Her calmness was something that many people couldn't compare to. Moreover, actually, I think that it's not too late to say these things 20 years later. She looked like a dough ball. Not only did she not refute, she even smiled. However, when she refuted, it was so sharp and vicious, hitting the nail on the head. Some of the madams present should have heard a lot of good and bad words 20 years ago. Then, how many of you can confidently say that you are the same as 20 years ago, sweeter on the outside and sweeter on the inside? I believe that there are also people who can slap back those who said all kinds of bad things in front of them and proudly tell them that they are very good. Jingwan's voice was not loud, and she didn't even look back, but the people around her all heard it. One by one, they became mute. Even the ignorant little girls didn't dare to say anything. Among them, there were few who hadn't heard their mothers talk about how glorious they were when they were young, but all kinds of misfortunes and hardships after they got married. Madame Luo, who was sitting with the other madams, was also a little worried at first, but now she was very relieved. This was her granddaughter, the granddaughter who had been raised by her. Jingwan looked at Great Elder Princess with a smile. Great Elder Princess, let's continue the game. Otherwise, they will be anxious. Jingwan raised her chin to the male guests. Great Elder Princess was also deeply touched by her words. This girl is really amazing. The more I look at her, the more I love her. If she marries into the royal family, forget it, I'd better not think about these meaningless things. Great Elder Princess nodded. That was because the 10 prizes were different from the ones given to the female guests earlier. That was, the people who had drawn the lots would not have to put their wooden pieces back. Otherwise, if Jing Wan was so lucky that she took a few chances, it would be fine if she didn't take away the prizes, but if one person took all the prizes, the others would definitely feel indignant and resentful. Up until now, it could be said that Jingwan was the only one who was in the limelight. Her words and actions were naturally the center of attention. Her words not only affected the women and young ladies, but also affected the male guests even more. Those who were always bullied and felt inferior and timid couldn't help but straighten their chests, and those who were originally arrogant couldn't help but restrain themselves a little. As for those who were older, most of them were thinking about the past with a little bit of thinking. Li Hongyuan laughed in a low voice, and then laughed louder and louder. His laughter made everyone's hair stand on end. The maid who came with the wood pieces again shrank her head and didn't dare to make a sound. When he was done laughing, he raised his head and looked at the crowd with a smile. Do you think that 20 years later, I'll have no bones left, or I'll still be like now? At least half of the people thought the former. In their opinion, Emperor Le Cheng couldn't live for 20 years. No matter which prince ascended the throne, he would be the first to be killed. However, people like Qin Tianming were cursing in their hearts. 20 years later, no one would be able to control this emperor. He would most likely be even more arrogant than he was now. Of course, at that time, he would no longer be young. Moreover, the emperor would more or less have some misgivings and might restrain himself. What would Li Hongyuan be like 20 years later? Others didn't know, but he knew. However, that was in the previous life. He was in his early 40s, and his health had long deteriorated. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to wait for his only son to grow up, he might not have survived until then. In this life, he naturally wouldn't let the same thing happen again. 20 years later, he wasn't sure about other things, but he was sure of one thing. He would definitely hold Wan in his arms and bully her however he wanted. Li Hongyuan waved to the little maid holding the wood piece. "Give it to me." The little maid trembled as she came forward and handed over the wood piece. Li Hongyuan glanced at it and handed it to Li Hongming. "Don't embarrass yourself too much." Li Hongming took the wood piece. Sure enough, his name was on it. "I was really chosen. I hope my luck is good." He was a prince and naturally didn't need the reward. However, if he was punished, he would lose a lot of face. Of course, it wouldn't be bad if he could get the reward and give it to his subordinates. Their imperial aunt could decide on the reward and send it directly to Emperor Le Cheng without asking for their father's permission. No one else could do this. This time, many people stood up and bowed to Prince Rui first. Few of the female guests could make Prince Rui bow to them. Great Elder Princess was naturally kind to Li Hongming. She tried her best to treat his elder brother's children equally. "You have to work hard. If you embarrass yourself, it will not only be a matter of face." Li Hongming smiled bitterly. "Imperial aunt, it's not up to me to decide. Why don't you spare me this time?" Great Elder Princess immediately changed her face. "Do you want others to call you a coward in the future?" Li Hongming's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and took out his purse to choose the project. Without giving it to the maid, he opened it himself. He was not very happy, but he was a little relieved. It seemed that he was not very good at it, but he could still finish it. There was no fixed name for the lyrics for the current scene, so it could be simple or complicated. Li Hongming didn't spend so much time thinking about it. Sure enough, it was not outstanding. Great Elder Princess pondered. "Everyone, do you think Prince Rui passed or not?" "Yes," someone said weakly, and then more and more people echoed. "Well, I guess you've passed." Great Elder Princess waved her hand. Of course, there was no reward for him. Most of the people who let him pass did not want him to lose face. In fact, there was no need to think about who the first person to speak was. Li Hongming smiled sincerely and left gracefully. After he went back, no one said anything, but he was ridiculed by Li Hongyuan again. Li Hongming did not dare to refute. When he was young, it was almost the same thing. He just straightened his neck and said, "If you have the ability, why don't you try to compose a song? You want to compete with me, an ignorant and incompetent person?" Li Hongyuan had always been so frank. "If you are chosen, I wish you success in advance. In fact, I want to try all the punishment projects." Since he was so shameless, he was naturally invincible. Even those old pedantic people could only sigh in front of Li Hongyuan. After Prince Rui sadly left, the next few people, some were punished, and some passed. None of them was outstanding. The most interesting thing was probably that one of them was punished and got a green waist. Didn't he know how to do it? It didn't matter. Great Elder Princess directly called the dancers in the mansion to teach him how to dance on the spot. His appearance made everyone laugh. It must be said that he was a young master of a commandery prince. In the end, he simply did not care about it and deliberately made fun of it. Even the most dignified noble women laughed so hard that they couldn't stand straight. "If it goes on like this, we can't even give out 10 purses. In fact, it was easy for them to give out 10 purses. But if they used the lottery, no matter how capable they were, they would be defeated if they got the one they were not good at. Therefore, they had to rely on luck. Jingwan didn't take it seriously. Luck is also a part of strength. Luck is also a part of strength. Great Elder Princess chewed on this sentence. Well said. Girl, it's your turn to draw this time. Okay. Jingwan nodded and didn't refuse. After Jingwan drew it, the expression on her face was a little subtle. Sun Yijia tilted her head and her face also changed. Seeing them like this, the people next to them all craned their heads to look. Ah, it's Prince Jin. This voice was very exaggerated. There were a few other voices expressing their surprise one after another. Great Elder Princess was stunned and then laughed. What did you say just now? Luck is also a part of strength. Look at your luck. She was obviously making fun of her. Jingwan stared at the 3 words on the wood for a while and slowly put it down. To be able to draw Jin Qinwang out, doesn't that mean that this subject's daughter's strength is extraordinary? Just now, when the 3 words Jin Qinwang were shouted out, the other side had already faintly heard it. Li Hongyuan was very conscious and took advantage of this time to walk over. His hearing was originally extraordinary. Even though Jingwan's voice was small, at this moment, it was clearly transmitted into his ears. Pa, he clapped his hands and walked closer. These words, Ben Wang likes to hear. He grabbed the performance item with his left hand and directly threw it to Jingwan. Then he took a purse for the punishment item with his right hand. Since you drew me, you will perform for me. Therefore, she was very lucky to meet this person. However, it was not good luck, but bad luck. He would not look for bad luck after the event. He would look for bad luck immediately. Some of these items were specially prepared for men. Although there were many items that coincided with women's, what if she drew the item that she couldn't finish? There were many people who rejoiced in her misfortune. They all saw that Li Hongyuan had already drawn the punishment purse. Of course, if she drew the item to wear women's clothing, it didn't matter. But for the other items, she also had to suffer. Aya, she herself had come up with a lot of ideas before. What was this called? Moving a stone to smash her own foot. Could she refuse Li Hongyuan's request? Of course not. Jingwan opened the purse. If you can perform well, the reward will be yours. If you can't perform, the punishment will be received by Ben Wang. In addition, if you receive the reward, you can also decide whether Ben Wang should continue to accept the punishment. After all, according to the rules, if you don't perform, you should be punished. Li Hongyuan casually tossed the punishment purse in his hand. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Prince Jin was so good today. Did he eat the wrong medicine? Just based on what you said just now, Ben Wang will make you extraordinarily strong for once. So what? Was this because her words pleased this living king of hell and made him in a good mood, so he wanted to be a gentleman for once? In essence, it was narcissism that had no bounds. Jingwan took out the slip of paper from the purse. Poem, the topic was early spring. To tell the truth, Jingwan had only learned the basics of poetry in this life. For her to write a poem, it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Writing it well was even more impossible. But she remembered a lot of excellent poems. She never thought of taking those out as her own. The problem was that if she couldn't compose it, Li Hongyuan would be punished. He wanted to be a good person now, a gentleman. But after that, she didn't dare to believe in this person's character. Tangled, no matter if you can or can't, at least say something. What are you doing in a daze? Someone impatiently urged. It wasn't someone else, it was the Junju next to Wan Fengfei. Li Hongyuan faintly swept a glance and unsurprisingly met Wan Fengfei's focused gaze. Under everyone's watchful eyes, she didn't reveal anything. Li Hongyuan didn't doubt that the words he said just now made this woman target WN. In addition to WN Wan's previous performance, she attracted everyone's attention. In the past banquets, even if she didn't do anything, she would still be the moon surrounded by stars and the focus of the young master's discussion. Now, who would still remember her? It would be strange if she didn't bear a grudge. No matter how gentle and elegant she appeared to be, she actually hated people who were more dazzling than her the most, as well as those who were as beautiful as they were on the surface. Jingwan now had both of them. Perhaps one more thing should be added: she had obtained Li Hongyuan's attention. Her desire to destroy Jingwan had probably climbed above everyone else. "How about I compose a poem?" "Don't worry, I don't want a reward," Ruan Fengfei suddenly said. It was just that her tone seemed to be a bit too big, as if as long as she could compose a poem, she would definitely be rewarded. However, looking at the expressions of the surrounding people, there wasn't a single person who thought it was strange. Jingwan turned around. Ruan Fengfei was so perfect that it was unreal. How could she forget about this person who might have the same background as her? If that was the case, she would be exposed if she recited a poem. However, right now, it might be an opportunity to determine whether she was the same as her. Alright, Jin Qinwang shouldn't mind, right? But this prospective Ce Fei, without Jiao Jie, she might just be a Wang Fei. Jingwan's smile was a bit ambiguous. Everyone also followed with a kind smile, especially those matrons. They had a deeper meaning. It wasn't that they minded very much. She wouldn't. If he was willing to be punished, she would. She wouldn't mind letting her decide whether he would be punished or not. WNWAN, you pushed your own husband to someone else. Record it down and calculate it in the future. If he flicked his sleeves and left now, although it would sweep away Ruan Fengfei's face, it was more likely to bring trouble to WNWAN. This wasn't his original intention. Before he married WNWAN, he always had to carefully protect her. He wanted to ruin her reputation, and then logically match her with him, who was black from head to toe. But the so-called bad reputation, he couldn't let her be tainted even a little bit. Li Hongyuan's face was expressionless. Ruan Fengfei only took it as his silent consent. Perhaps in this short moment, Ruan Fengfei already had a card up her sleeve and opened her mouth. When she finished reading, many people had already started to discuss, saying, as expected of Miss Ruan, "She's still so amazing, this poem is really good. It's graceful and lively, just like Feng Fei. There will be another poem in Miss Ruan's book of poems," and so on. In short, it was all praise. Jingwan didn't know how to compose poems, but she knew how to appreciate poems. She had to admit that Ruan Fengfei's poem was quite good. It was indeed worthy of a prize, but it wasn't something she was familiar with. Was it because she didn't know? Or was it actually Ruan Fengfei's original work? If Li Hongyuan knew Jingwan's thoughts, then he would clearly tell her that Ruan Fengfei was indeed an original product. She didn't come from another place like her, nor did she live a second life like him. She was indeed very outstanding, especially in poetry. However, no matter how good her poems were, no matter how beautiful they didn't exceed the category of a girl in the boudoir. If she had more experience and knowledge, then she might be able to leave a legacy for generations. The premise was that she had to grow up like a normal person. Unfortunately, this person's roots were already crooked. He admitted that he himself was crooked, but he could clearly understand himself. Ruan Fengfei wasn't. She thought that she was perfect, outstanding, and that everything she did was right. Let's not punish her, right? Ruan Fengfei looked at Jingwan and suggested. Although that was the case, Jingwan's feeling was different. Ruan Fengfei wasn't suggesting her, but was instructing her. That kind of faintly matter-of-fact attitude, and she was clearly stepping on Jingwan to pretend to be a good person. It was as if it wasn't because of her words, Jingwan would do something overboard. The surrounding people seemed to be used to it and didn't feel anything. Ruan Fengfei really had a problem as a person. Her disguise was already deeply rooted in people's hearts. If she was like these people and was imperceptibly influenced for a long time, she would also feel that she was good. Just like Jiao Jie, other than feeling that she was too perfect to be real, she didn't say anything bad about her. This kind of person, if she wasn't dangerous, then it was fine. If she was dangerous, then the danger factor would be very high. Therefore, if it wasn't necessary, one must not come into contact with her and stay as far away as possible. Jingwan originally didn't want Jin Qinwang to make a fool of himself, so she naturally agreed. However, Li Hongyuan had already opened the pouch in his hand. Looking at the words on the paper, his lips hooked up. That appearance was really very bewitching. When Ben Wang was young, Mu Fei and I wore female children's clothing. Ben Wang himself couldn't see, but Mu Fei and the palace maids by her side all said that it was unbelievably beautiful. How could the crowd not understand what kind of punishment he received? Those who had seen Li Hongyuan's appearance when he was young couldn't help but nod. At that time, it was hard to tell whether he was a boy or a girl. He was really very exquisite and beautiful, and no one could compare to him. Who knew how many people wanted to take him home to raise him, but Su Guifei kept a close eye on him and Le Chengdi protected him tightly. Slowly, this boy became a bit of a scoundrel. The more he grew, the more crooked he became, and the more unlikable he became. Sure enough, Li Hongyuan turned the front of the paper to face the crowd. Don't want to see? As he spoke, he thoughtfully touched his chin. This face now, if I dress it up properly and cover the places that should be covered, perhaps it would also look good. If I wear a more suitable set of clothes. To tell the truth, right now, Li Hongyuan's body was first class. Even if that face was more handsome, it wouldn't be mistaken for a woman. It was hard for them to imagine what he would look like if he wore female clothing and makeup. On the contrary, when Jingwan heard his words, she was very eager to give it a try. In her previous life, there were a lot of men cross-dressing. Even if it was a masculine man, after careful dressing, he would still be very beautiful. If Li Hongyuan's face was well painted, it would definitely be a first-class super beauty. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's small eyes. How could he not understand what she was thinking? His family's WN wanted to see it, so it wasn't that he couldn't sacrifice a bit. However, not now. He didn't have the idea of entertaining everyone. After marriage, she could close the door and slowly toss about. Li Hongyuan threw the paper and the pouch back. Many people were a little regretful. They knew that it was impossible for Jin Qinwang to be willing to wear female clothing. He was just teasing them. Ruan Fengfei was relieved. How could he really throw her face? Was it over like this? How could it be? A certain male peacock hadn't fallen in love with the woman he liked yet. Just when everyone thought that he would leave, Li Hongyuan opened another performance pouch. He looked at it, rubbed it out, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again and threw it away again. Not to mention the female guests, even the male guests' mouths were twitching. Everyone believed that if he couldn't find a performance that satisfied him, he would probably open all the pouches. Great Elder Princess resisted the urge to beat this bastard. When he opened the sixth pouch, Li Hongyuan was finally satisfied. This one. The maid looked at Great Elder Princess helplessly. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.